Puff of the ganja weed. Yeah, we're live. Hey, we're live. So actually, I won't even wait here because we're not going to be too technical with this today. But hey, if you want to say a few things, Matt, go ahead. But I'm just going ahead and do my normal thing here and share this.
Hey, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We're going to have a pretty laid-back podcast today. Not really any set things that we've decided to talk about. We're just going to go with the flow, have some fun. If you guys have any questions, we're going to take some questions in the chat, answer those as well. Like I said, we're just going to take it nice and easy today.
Yeah, it's all about enjoying interaction, engagement with the chat. Why am I not seeing this coming up here now? Oh, I know why. Never mind. Okay, it's all right. We're good. We're good. We're good. Okay. And there we go. I better pause it so I don't hear myself talking. Okay, share. Copy. Yeah, we're going to have to wait a few minutes before people even start to get in here anyways. So it's all good in the hood. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just working on pulling the live stream up too so I can open the chat.
Yep. Yeah, I got it open there now too. Okay, so there it's on there. Post it to my Twitter. There we go. Okay. Twitter's done. Might as well add it to Minds. That's another thing, folks. If there is anyone there already in the chat, I'm not only on Facebook and Twitter, I'm also on Minds and Gab as well. A couple alternative sites that actually allow us to hedge. You know, if some of these other social media outlets do determine or decide at some point in time to shut us down, as we're seeing, some of that stuff is definitely happening. But if they do decide to do that, good luck, because it's not going to happen. Why? Yeah, because the smart ones among us, yeah, we've hedged our bets. I'm not relying on one entity or one corporation or one social media outlet for me to propagate what I got to say. Nothing they can do, like I said. Not a damn thing, any of these central planners, and it pisses them off tremendously. I know it does. I can only imagine what it must be like in the minds of these people when they had the ability to just rule the roost for so long, and now they can't. They have to listen to people like me, right? And you can't shut me up. Oh, that must really piss them off. That's the stuff that dreams are made out of, though, is pissing off central planners or authoritarians. Okay, so we're good now. We're rolling now. So it's all up. Okay. Now, actually, I'm probably going to have to keep this playing in the background. All right, we're good. We're good. Okay, actually, I better reload this. Shit, I should have never done that, actually, now that I think about it. Actually, I'm probably going to have to keep this playing in the background.
Oh, as we're getting closer to 2020, I've been taking a look at the U.S. political candidates, and man, it's looking good for Trump. Like, I've been watching the Democrat, how they got like 20 of them that they've selected so far, and like Bernie Sanders, Beto O'Rourke or whatever, Cory Booker. Like, if this is the competition, I hope Hillary gets in it too. That'd be great.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Actually, you know what's funny? I was just watching a video earlier by you watch Timcast? Tim Bolt? Real good. Yeah, he's a real good guy, actually, Tim is. And apparently this Beto O'Rourke guy was he was an anarchist hacker at one point in the time. Well, my things have changed, I guess. A little bit of corrupting power has that tendency towards some people. Right? What happened, Beta? Or Beto? Sure, I shouldn't call him Beta. Although he kind of does look like a beta.
No, that's what his nickname is. Trump's gonna come out on stage and start calling him Beto O'Rourke or something.
All right, I'm gonna try this again because
I think that's what I'm the most excited for is all the nicknames that Trump's gonna come up for all these candidates.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Good Hillary, low energy Jeb. Wonder what we're gonna see this year.
I know.
Cortez, we're gonna see probably.
Yeah, and I mean, Elizabeth Warren, she is running again, but you can't even use Pocahontas anymore because yeah, sorry, but 1024th just don't cut it. Christ, that's hilarious, though, right? That's the problem with this identity politics stuff, and everyone that's out there practicing it or promoting it or espousing it because they think it's going to benefit them. I think most of them are starting to, or at least the wise ones, anyways, they're starting to recognize at this point in time it's actually going to bite you right straight in your own fucking ass by playing this identity politics game. And like I say, you're seeing it now today, where everyone seems to want to run to their political corner or their identity politics box where they've been placed in, but then they realize once they get in there, it's like, hey, wait a minute, you placed me nowhere here with a bunch of people that actually I only share one fucking tiny little thing with them in common. The rest, I don't really agree with these people at all. So I don't feel like I'm very comfortable sitting here anymore, right? But hey, you painted your little box. Now you're going to have to sit in it. Hey, it's not so much fun to play identity politics. That's the funny part is I think most people, especially the collectivists, whether they're on the right or the left, eventually they're all going to have to come to terms at some point in time. This, we libertarians, those of us that stand up for like the promotion of individual rights, freedoms, and liberty, we're waiting for you. We'll be right here all this time. I'm way ahead of you. Been here at the finish line where it's like understanding what it is to be a free human being means that you have to break that all the way down to the individual. So I'm here. Like I said, I'm waiting here at the finish line, and I'm waiting for the rest of you to finally get caught up to speed. Some of you might not make it, though, because what I see out there is you're all tripping each other up. So there might be a few of you that might make it to the finish line. I wish you all the best of luck. But when you do, you'll realize that all the collectivists, they're all left back in the dust because they tripped each other up along the way and nobody won. All you'll see is a bunch of losers.
And don't all these old ass politicians understand that we have the internet and, you know, YouTube nowadays where they'll go and make a stance like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer and all that. Oh, they're anti-immigration. Now they want open borders because that's kind of the platform the left's leaning towards. And then you'll just Google and you'll see them a couple years back in their earlier races running saying, you know, oh, we can't have illegal immigration. So, like, do they not, before they take these big stances, Google and say, have I had a completely opposite stance just a few years prior? Like, do a little research, guys.
Walking, talking contradictions. That's the beautiful thing that I love about it, is because all you have to be is intellectually, morally, and philosophically consistent. And like I say, let that be your long run game, and then let the rest of the idiots that are playing these short term games or these political games, let them go ahead and do it. Because at the end of the day, or at whatever their term or whatever, everyone's going to realize, shit, here I was following these people that were running towards a really steep cliff, and they really had a lot of short distance to run. Seemed like a good ride while we were going at it, but oh damn, I realized that the ultimate destination was that goddamn cliff. And I was like, well, I want to jump off before I get there, which is, like I say, why I never fall for identity politics, never have in the past. Do a little kudos, a little pat on my back for never doing that, because I recognize the fallibility and the stupidity for trying to collectivize and paint people as if they're all just some like a maniacal or collective such as the Borg. So because I guess if you're like, that's the thing there. I'll just bring in, like, whether you're talking about the convoy from Alberta that went to Ottawa to protest against the environmentalism and basically the destruction of the oil and gas industry in Canada, or the yellow vest types, right? So people in the blue collar world, the blue collar field, that, yeah, they're sorry, elitists, you lefties, or you upper middle class white collar folks. I suppose those blue collar, strong, resilient people that'll say things that's on their mind that they don't use political correctness. I guess, you know, that does seem a little bit harsh, a little bit abrasive to you. You know, that's actually what it is to be just a regular human being, is to have your own personal interests and do not fall for a political orthodoxy or a top-down authoritarian type of message. So when they see that people are willing to stand up for what they perceive as their own personal interests, the central planners are like, well, no, we hit the message already there for you. You're going off script, folks. Well, get used to that, you central planner dipshits, because most people, at least you should realize at this point in time, especially if you are a central planner, if you're in government, you've seen the kind of lackeys that listen to your fucking bullshit and follow your orders. You know how fucking unintelligent and how docile and how dormant these people are. That's not a representation of the typical blue collar folks, right? These are people that are willing to climb up huge giant towers, work in very dangerous fields. So yes, to try to compare or contrast them with your little mindless order followers that want to feel safe and secure with big government, that's why you seem so shocked and outraged and concerned with people, because you've probably never seen that in your own little inner circle. In your own little inner circle, you're probably just a bunch of fucking people that are scared of anything that's outside of your little narrow scope or privy as far as what you deem as being social or human justice. When you see other people practice their own form of human or social justice, that as I expect, and I rightfully see, it does definitely bother you. But you know what? You're never going to beat that out of people, because that's actually how most humans, actually not just humans, but all species, how they propagate and procreate and keep that species going is, yeah, they don't conform to the betas, the cocks, the wimps, the losers, the ones that actually have no capacity to properly propagate their species, or the intellectual or physical prowess is what it is to be strong, thrive, and survive. So as much as the central planners want to bring us all down to their level, you're never going to be able to do that. And the ones that you keep bringing down to your level are people that are already 3/4 of the way there. So at the end of the day, when you go and look out there on that big landscape, when you see that divide that you're constantly trying to create, you're going to have to, at some point in time, I wish actually it was all done where we could just take a picture of it. Look at where all the lefties, the collectivists, or even some of these fucking right-winger collectivists, look at them all. Look at them all. Look at what these people are. These are people that just can't function socially or economically in society. So these are the people that are predominantly, mostly failures. And they somehow have this conceptual belief that they're now going to dominate the people that don't fit into that little realm or that category. The successful people, they feel that they're going to be able to bring them down their level by using the power of the gun. Well, guess what? Even people in government recognize that, well, they're not going to always cater to the inept or the lowly masses, even though they like to put forth, present that message. At the end of the day, you'll find out, and you see that. You must recognize today that the government world, the people in big government, they're very much promoting the corporate class, the bigwigs. Why? Because they rely on them, as their income base. So you'll never win this game, no matter what the hell you guys try to do, or girls. You're not going to win against the people that have not just the intellectual capacity, but the physical prowess, and not just the ambitions, but the principles and the convictions to carry out what they truly stand for. When you stand for things that aren't actually conducive with human freedom or liberty, and it's just based on an ideology where you're just doing things that is actually in complete contrast to what you need to be a free human being yourself, yeah, good luck with you trying to compete with people that are basically fighting for their lives and their freedoms. Not something you're going to win.
I'll pose one of the first questions to you, I guess, to start things off. So if you had to take let's say, top 3 pick for the Democrat 2020 in the United States of America, who do you think is going to be like the top 3? Now, they got about 20. They might get about even more than 20 candidates running. You kind of got the flow of the how many and which ones are going to be out there. Who's going to be the ones that rise to the top and kind of give Trump the run for the money at the end of it?
Crap, I just had her name. Actually, you might know it, so I don't have to say. The chick from Hawaii. What's that chick from Hawaii?
Tulsi Gabbard or something, I think is her name.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. That woman actually, well, for the principled Democrats, for the ones that would consider themselves like liberal, I guess, in the classical sense, or centrist, or even remotely anyone resembling what the American experience was all about, is you would definitely support someone like Gabby or what's her name again? Sorry,
Tulsi Gabbard, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Tulsi Gabbard. That's her name. Yeah, I actually listened to her, and it's so funny because I listened to her. What was the one I was watching? Was it an NBC? Anyway, she was being interviewed by one of these fucking hacks in the established media or something, and it's hilarious. They go on about trying to really, if you look at there today, the Democrats, and I mean, it happened under Obama, which is it's all the evidence we need, folks, is the Democrats are just as much warmongers as their neocon counterparts in the Republican Party. And that's what most people are recognizing today. And that's where the true divide is. The true divide today isn't, left versus right. The true divide is authoritarians versus libertarians, people that are all about standing up in defense of themselves and doing the right things as far as what it is to be a free human being, but not playing this collective game or playing this pit and groups against each other. The people that are standing for true freedom recognize that you have to have some semblance of a live, let live mentality, especially in reference in regard to some of these hornet nests in the Middle East. I always say I'm more than willing to defend, the interest of not just Canada, the U.S., or some of these our Western allies, but if there's even corporations that have set up a business in the Middle East, of course we should defend those people. But at the end of the day, if the people in that country, whether it's because of the politics of the day or whatever the rulers are or whatever the choices they make, if they don't want to deal with you or trade with you freely as much as you would wish to, or some of the neocons say, well, let's just force them. Let's just go and use military conflict as a means to impose Western values. As much as I definitely respect and promote Western or values.
Let's promote freedom by using force and violence.
Yeah, like that doesn't work, because now you've destroyed your credibility at that point in time.
Those bombs will make them understand. Don't they know that? Democracy in the form of bombs, the greatest way to unite a country.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, even people, when they talk about Trump, look at Trump. He's actually doing more to withdraw troops and these conflicts in the Middle East than whether it was Obama, the Clintons, the Bushes, any of them. I mean, look at the mess. Actually, what Trump's having to do today is more or less try to go around and clean up some of these conflicts. And actually, if you had someone like Trump that knows all about using your words rather than pure baseless violence, they probably would have come up with deals with, so whether it's, like I say, the Mujahideen or Al-Qaeda, as far as if you want to get some of the resources or access to those resources in Afghanistan, such as the opiate trade or some of the rare minerals, listen, even drug dealers know. You just got to figure out, everybody has a price for the most part, right? Especially when you're talking about these particular actors. So you just got to figure out a way how you can grease their palm. You do things, like I say, through deals, through exchanges, through voluntary contracts. And if they don't hold up their end of the contract, you don't hold up your end of the contract, which means everyone loses, which is why even drug dealers, even people in drug trades will hold up to their end of the bargain, right? Because if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, then the person on the other side, the recipient of that trade agreement, well, they're not going to want to deal with them any further. So you always have to get back to proper incentive structures. So if you're worried about, oh, well, we need to bomb these countries because we need access to these resources, and you suggest that, well, they don't own those resources. Well, then if you suggest that people in these countries don't own those resources, and maybe I'll agree with you to some degree, well, then you should also suggest that in your own country. So you should be at least intellectually and morally consistent, which once again always comes back to me is the promotion of free trade. Doesn't have to always be conducive with central planning or statism. It could be just individual businesses or actors. You can still get that same result of actual getting that freedom of exchange, but you don't have to go through using the force of government. Because once you go through the barrel of the gun, or by using government as a means to that end, well, then the other people on the other side of that equation are always going to try to circumvent and find their own way to screw you over. So at least have some kind of engagement when you're talking about economic transactions with some of these foreign countries. You can deal with them. It can be even maybe, not on the up and up as far as what some people would say as far as what's government regulated trade. Maybe you might have to do something that's a little bit different than what government regulated trade would entail or what it would mean. But as long as, like I say, that contract is entered into voluntarily, and everyone on that either side of that equation gets what they deem is attributable to their own personal happiness, or what they consider they walked away as a benefactor from that transaction, there's not going to be a need for conflict. The minute you used preemptive force as a means to an end, well, now you're going to escalate conflict, and we've seen how that's played out for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, the easiest way to convince a country to come to freedom and liberty and the principles that Christian values promoted throughout history is lead by example. And I think it was very successful when the South Koreans, for the North Koreans, would send them over like American movies or slip in pamphlets of magazines and stuff to let them see the culture. And that's the best way to convince a nation to come to our values, is just by leading by example. So if you're living in some shitty communist country where majority of your wealth's being taken and you're not having all the freedoms that you could enjoy, and your next door neighbor is someone like America, or you can see American culture, and they got the best movies, they got the best cultures, everyone's happy, everyone's free, life standards are higher, the quality of life's better, everyone's making more money. Well, it's going to be pretty hard to not want that kind of lifestyle. And that's why immigration is so valuable in our countries and why everyone wants to come to these Western nations is because, yeah, they're the best. That's why they want to come here. They love our culture. That's why we make the best movies and all that kind of stuff. And that's the best way to convince them. Just lead by example, then they'll come over. But yeah, and that's why you can, when you understand that, you understand that all the wars and interventions that our military industrial complex does now is simply just for money and the resources, like my father was stating. They're in Afghanistan and they're in all these other locations for either the resources of the land or controlling the dictators there to make money off the people. It has nothing to do with trying to spread democracy or liberty, how they like to spin it for you. Like I said, or they just lead by example.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find an article because this was something I was just reading the other day. And I thought, oh, you fuckers, the way they go about doing things is just so nefarious and underhanded. Okay, where are we at? Just trying to find it here. Just give me a second. Okay. No, maybe I'm not seeing it here.
What are you looking for?
Maybe I only shared it. Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't actually favorite it. Maybe I just shared it on my Facebook page. Okay, I'm just checking. It was some $500 thing that the federal liberals are introducing in their, well, basically what they're doing now is they're getting ready to buy some votes because they know they're in.
All right, but we got off topic there. The question I posed to you.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Was, who do you think the top three is going to be running in the Democratic election 2020 for the United States?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard was number one or whatever. Who else do you think is going to be a major candidate for them that's going to end up being in the finals?
Well, I mean, I think maybe this Beto O'Rourke.
He seems to be like their establishment pick. If you like the neocons were to pick someone, probably someone like him.
Yeah. Tell you the truth, though, I mean, I don't think any of them have anything.
Well, Bernie's still throwing his hat in, so you got the diehard Bernie bros, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Bernie bros will definitely appeal to the very, I think mostly the very young, right? The very, like, because as most humans understand, is socialism is something that you only promote if you're so economically illiterate, where you actually haven't lived the real world, where you're actually being a productive member of society.
Yeah, people love Bernie because he's going to be throwing bags of cash at helicopters over America. So everyone, the young will definitely like that. Free school, free healthcare, free everything for, he just, the pot of gold. Bernie's just going to get up there and empty that pot of gold over America and just give all that wealth. Don't know where it's coming from, but he's just going to make it happen. Maybe he's a leprechaun and he's got magical spells and he's just going to get in the Fed and start making some money.
Well, that's the part I don't understand about, especially if you're a socialist in the United States of America. You're literally in the most wealthiest, most prosperous nation on the fucking planet, and you're promoting or you're supporting some old white dude, right? That's the thing. A lot of these people that would predominantly be from the left side of the political spectrum, you're supporting an old white dude that promotes National Socialism. You fuck, because Democrats.
Oh, no, but here's the
Democratic. When you're talking about Democratic, right? Because that's what he says. He always says, hey, I'm a democratic socialist. Well, if you're democratic, what's a democracy? Well, it's a nation. It's a state. So you're promoting socialism within a state. Well, it sounds very National Socialist as far as I'm concerned.
But the crazy part about that is, if I got my history right, during the 1950s and 60s and JFK era and stuff like that, wasn't there the big conversation in America was communist infiltration? Wasn't that the big thing? And the FBI was investigating all that, and a lot of these central agencies were making sure that they didn't have communists, infiltrating America and affecting politics and trying to bring socialism in. And didn't our previous presidents warn us of that stuff? And back then, if they found out you're a communist in America and trying to promote communism, you got arrested back then. That was some serious shit. They're like, hell no, we're not. This is America, land of capitalism and freedom. And now, like you just said, we're so desensitized. Now we're a generation down the road, and it's Oh yeah, it was National Socialism is totally cool to be running in America as a presidential candidate platform. Like insane. Just one generation ago, that stuff got you locked up, and even major concerns from all these agencies. And now these agencies are propaganda hands promoting that same shit they fought to end just not long ago.
Yeah, well, let me just say first and foremost, and the people that have been paying attention to my videos on my Canadian Libertarian channel for the few years I've been doing it, you know this. You know, when I started saying this, you know exactly where I'm coming from because I pointed out many times in the past. This constant pretense that the people that promote collectivisms are right winger, like they use the communists, right? Communism was more left, and then they said that Hitler was all about their form of right wing collectivism, like fascism. But once again, look at fucking Hitler. Look at the things that he espoused. Look at the people he surrounded himself with, and tell me that these are like your typical strong white male. No, these are the Hitler himself. Look at, have you seen the fucking body shape of this guy? Just go look at the footage. All right. The guy's shoulders are about this wide. No, but really though. And he has this, like, I'm overcompensating. I've got a 3-inch wiener. So look at how strong. Real strong. No, but really though, real strong men do not act like that. Okay, folks. And I mean, come on. If you've ever met anyone in your fucking personal lives that were truly strong, independent, very resilient, and knew that they had lots of physical prowess or even intellectual capacity at their disposal, you know, they don't go around talking like fucking the Hitler types or the Bernie Sanders types or most of these socialist dipshits that they like to pretend, right? They like to pretend that they're strong men. But I mean, once again, what are they promoting? Oh, I need government to take care of me from cradle to the grave. I need someone to forcefully redistribute everyone else's incomes or their wealth because I'm too inept to fucking generate anything for myself. In other words, I guess, prior to this socialism or communism or collectivism, I guess all these people, I guess they would have died and never been able to propagate their species because they were too inept to even fucking do anything to take care of not just themselves, but their offspring. So come on, right wing? No fucking way. I'm so tired of hearing these idiots, but what it is, it's history revisionist that they like to pretend because that's what they love, playing the left-right politics. So I guess the collectivists are like, okay, we'll call the commie types, we'll call them left-wingers, and we'll call the fascist types, we'll call them right-wingers and pretend they're somehow different. Meanwhile, like you said, USSR, what did it stand for? United Soviet Socialist Republics. Fascism, Nazism, short for National Socialism. They're all socialists. Of course, they have their own particular brand. They're not all going to agree. Collectivists don't all agree with each other. They want to implement their own kind. Even people that you hear today that constantly are against capitalists. Every time they say, oh, no, that wasn't proper socialism or that wasn't communism or that wasn't, they'll say, and you'll hear, and you've probably heard other people say, they're basically saying, oh, now if I was a dictator, this is how I would implement my particular form of communism or socialism or collectivism, right? So they're all central planners. They have no capacity and apparently no power within their own lives that they seem comfortable with. So they feel that they've got to search out to impose everything on other people as a means to make them somehow successful. If you're successful in your own personal life, economically or socially, you don't try to impose that on other people. You might help try and spread that. Like, that's what I do. I've been, like, as far as economics, when I'm not being fucked over, I've done good, decent in my life. And I'm not rich, but I've never actually had this thing that I felt like wealth was the only thing that I needed to give me benefit in life. I'm one of those people that, as much as I'm a capitalist, for sure, money is not the end all be all for me. So I can assume and generate happiness within my own personal life and my own psychology without, having billions of dollars at my disposal. But the people that do have billions of dollars at disposal, because maybe they were maybe a little bit ambitious, maybe come up with an idea for a business model and became rightfully rewarded for offering a product or service to people that they definitely wanted and yearned for and compensated the person that invented it for. Good for them. And I should never, there's no pretense. There's never been any time in my life where I thought, these people that have been successful, I should somehow feel resentful towards them and want to see someone else have access to be able to steal or plunder their income. No, I think that the people that are most successful will actually, by sheer fact that they're smart enough to become successful, they'll probably figure out a better way to make that the redistribution part of that economic aspect, but in a voluntary exchange. That's what a business owner does. So there is wealth redistribution and income redistribution under the capitalist model. It's just all done involuntarily. So if I was the owner of a business and I brought in $1 billion, well, that $1 billion, once I go through like my gross revenue and I subtract, all the other expenditures, so, recapitalizing, building new sections of my building, or buying new machinery, or paying my employees, or all the other aspects. Well, that is a distribution of wealth, right? That wealth originally came right to me, come to my business, and I'm the owner of the business, but I will redistribute that wealth because I need everyone else to participate. But that's a voluntary form of wealth and income redistribution, which is what capitalism is all about. Socialism is to pretend that you get to, like I say, use this, the gun in the room, to dictate and determine who gets to get a certain portion of that income. Well, how are you going to know when the values or the proper allocation is going to happen when you're using the gun as a means to an end? You don't know. You don't know if the proper capital allocation or if the wages are proper or in line with the way it should work out properly as far as rewarding people for their work or their endeavors or for their intellect or for their capacities or for their productivity. The only way that happens is when it's done voluntarily. The minute force is introduced into any equation, socially or economically, well, then it's just, I guess we're just going back to the days of it's might makes right. And like I've said in many past videos, I'm all for even those people that are collectivists and you hate capitalism. If you want to go for the might makes right kind of scenario, I'm totally on game and on board with that too. Why? Because I definitely believe that capitalists or free market proponents such as myself will win in that equation as well. So no matter which way you try to go about it, collectivists are always going to end up not just being failures, but going to be the ones that are constantly being resentful because they see other people succeeding where they're not. But what they're not recognizing is the reason why they're not succeeding is because they're going about their form of success the wrong way.
Yeah, 3 stars said in the chat, maybe AOC. He thinks Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and AOC will probably be. And to AOC, I hope she runs, and I think she'll do well at the first because she does her Periscope and she's good on the social media, and the young people will love that. They don't actually look into any of her politics. But I think when she hits the debate stage, she falls apart because anytime the media actually holds her feet to the fire and asks her, how are you going to actually implement these policies? How are they going to be funded? She has no answers for that. So, and on the debate stage, obviously opposition party is going to ask those questions. Well, how are you going to pay for some of these things that you propose? And she has no answers, and that's where she'll fall apart. So I don't think she's going to do well enough that she'll make it to the end. She'll have maybe a little popular aspect at the beginning. But yeah, I think look out for Tulsi Gabbard. I think Bernie Sanders and probably Beto is going to be like your ones to look out for.
Right on. Well, like even when they're saying like this Alexandria Cortez, these collectivists, these socialist types or whatever, is I don't even understand why they keep pretending that they're thinking that they're going. Listen, just join libertarians, people that actually care about individual rights and freedom. Instead of promoting your socialism or your form of forced wealth or income redistribution, join libertarians, which are completely on board with holding corporations to account so they don't have the ability to use government themselves as a means to an end, to screw over whether it's employees or the consumer. Because that's the thing. When I hear socialists out there talking about the bad things that are happening today, I actually agree with a lot of them. The only thing is they try to attribute it to free market capitalism. The problem is we don't function under free market capitalism. Hello, we have a gigantic fucking state, whether you're talking about the U.S., Canada, or most Western countries. Look at the amount of regulations and bureaucracy and legislation that controls and dictates how economic or commerce even unfolds. So once again, I think, and even these people will come to realize at some point in time, is you're going to have to join libertarians and recognize that, no, you just got to hold everyone to account. The corporate world, people in government, and even private individuals. If we hold each other to account, we can all, like those of you that promote, some kind of form of collectivism, go ahead, try your form of collectivism. As long as you don't get to force that on me, you try it out. Alexander, you want to try socialism or your new Green Deal? You make that so that it's all voluntary entered into, and get your people that want to enter into some kind of collective endeavor as far as your new Green Deal. And if you can make that success, good for you and good for the people that helped you to get to that point. But just don't force it on people. But what it is most of these central planners realize that you can't ever implement any of these ideas, these forms of collectivism, which is usually a representation of force or violence or forced while their income redistribution. You're not going to make that work because some people are not going to want to be robbed and plundered because they recognize they're already doing the right thing economically and socially. So they don't feel a need or a union or any understanding that you should have the ability to dictate how they do things. They recognize that they're doing things all right already. So what capitalists are basically saying is, you collectivists, show us by competition. Just like if you wanted to, if you were out one of those people and said, hey, I'm faster than you running 100 yards. Okay, then go out and run the 100 yards. Done so. Show me that you're actually faster. Show me with the stopwatch, right? Show me. Then I might start giving, lending some credence or maybe lending an ear to listen to what you get to say. But you at least got to show with some kind of minor example where what you're promoting actually has any pretense of following through in the real world without using force. And that's the thing. It has to be done and based on not using force. Capitalism, all of the things that capitalists promote can be done and does happen every day because Matt, me, most of us, we deal with people, like I say, socially and economically. We don't use force preemptively towards people. We do it by using our words and you know, trying to barter or come to some form of agreement in how we want to do socially or economically interact with each other. If you can figure out a model that does that and it's conducive with the voluntary interaction, then people will automatically adopt that because they'll recognize that's a good practice. But collectivists realize, and that's the thing, they always got to use political rhetoric because they know how they get from here to there. It always requires using force. And the minute you're using force, well, then you're just basically eliciting or soliciting other people on the other side of the equation that they're going to pick up arms and use it back against you.
Yeah, I think since it's St. Patrick's Day and we got
let the shenanigans begin.
Yeah, we got some Scottish and Irish background. If it's not too hard to tell, I think we take the ideas from the Vikings and let's look into how they governed their societies back then. Okay, and then I've been doing a little research on the Vikings lately because, like I said, my heritage and it's pretty interesting how they ran their society. So I'm going to read you a little bit from a website how the ancient Vikings did their law and governance. So you got to think, these people they were warriors. They went and plundered a lot of cities. You know, they didn't have any written laws at the time. There was only rune writing existing at the time, but they had a sophisticated government and law system. So it was called, this is pretty interesting, the thing system. So they just called it a thing. Vikings kept it very simple. We got a thing. And it says the thing was a governing assembly made up of the free people of the community. Each community had its own independent thing where all free Vikings could gather and make law, resolve disputes, and make decisions. This meeting was called the thingstead. The thing system was not restricted to men. Women and handicapped people were also allowed to attend this meeting. So there you go. Even back in ancient times, the Vikings, God love them, vicious warriors with their big axes, respected all genders and give everyone the right. So even if you're a woman and handicapped, you had a right to speak back then. But history will always try to teach you, and today's culture will always try to teach you, oh, we kept people down, you know, we didn't allow women to speak. No, there has been cultures throughout times where women and people had rights as well. Here we go with the Vikings. So their thing system met at specific and regular times, and meetings could sometimes last for several days. Each thing had a law speaker who would recite law from memory, although all free men in the community were entitled to voice their opinions. It was still up to the law speaker and the local chieftain, the judge, to settle the cases and disputes they had. They said that this was a better system than having disputes settled by duels or family feuds. The Viking society, all free men and women had the right to conduct revenge killings. If you could kill someone in public without suffering serious consequences because you were honest and did not hide your actions, this gave the opportunities for others to react. It was important to take responsibility for the murder and not run away and pay fines. So the same applied to killing someone in a fight. So it's a pretty interesting read. There's more. I'm not going to go too in depth to it, but pretty cool to see that even our ancient ancestors, the Vikings, which me and my father stem from, like our lineage, and even back then they had a pretty cool, sophisticated way to conduct themselves, in a more moral and principled way, rather than just barbarism, killing each other's and dueling for any kind of dispute that someone had. So pretty cool.
Hey, Matt, actually, yeah, Gato, a guy, a lot of respect for Gato, actually, pays a lot of attention to my video and helps share a lot of my stuff and contributes a lot. Actually, really intelligent, especially on Minds, particular, not so much on the regular social media pages, but very wise person that actually puts out some great information, some great articles. But just pointed out in the chat, and I think I remember hearing this myself, and so I double checked. Yeah, so this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's 29, and I believe I think
it's like 35 or something.
Yeah, 35. So actually, she won't even be able to be officially eligible to run, I guess, for the 2020 election. So I guess you'd have to pick someone else other than her.
Oh, actually, that's our next. Let's segue off of that. What are your thoughts on the age limit to being a president at 35? I can see the arguments kind of for both sides, considering I'm a male that's 28 years of age, so I'm under that threshold. But compared to people like Bernie Sanders and some of these other old farts that are running in these elections and stuff, I would say I'd rather me as a 28-year-old ANCAP run the country with more morals and principles than some of these other older farts, And then there's also the argument that old people can sometimes get jaded and stick to their views and not get with the times, and times progress, things change, mindsets and moralities change. We get, progressively better at understanding these philosophies. So, we got to adapt with that, and the younger can adapt quicker. The old kind of tend to stick to their old views and mindsets. So what is your thoughts on the limit of 35 years and up to become a president?
That's a good question, actually, because I don't have a clear answer for that, because like you said, there is no one size fits all approach for me, because someone in their 20s, late 20s, as long as they have some decent life experience, and I recognize there is this understanding of wisdom, with age does come experience and wisdom, and that is definitely a truth. I can definitely say with 100% fact that what I know today at 48 years old, compare in contrast to when I was, let's say, even 38 or 28 or even 18, I've definitely learned a lot. But once again, that's my own personal subjective experience. I could also be one of those people, because I definitely know people that are my same age that are 48 years old, but I'm sure they've adapted and learned some extra knowledge compared or in contrast to when they were, maybe 10 years, 20, 30 years younger. But what's in their mind, the things they promote, have they actually advanced their knowledge in any way to reflect, what it is to be a free philosophically, right? So we all advance a particular kind of knowledge just by real world experience. Everything that we do, we learn to correct habits and behaviors, because that's what it is to be, well, not just a human being, but even in the animal kingdom. But when you're talking about politics and being like a central planner or someone running government, there is an area where I think it is a gray area where I wouldn't say, okay, we should lower the threshold to like an 18-year-old. Hell fucking no. Even a really intelligent 18-year-old, and I know there are lots of them out there, really smart people, but you just don't have life experience. And life experience definitely has to matter and has to be a contributing factor in your premise or what you put forth as far as how things should run socially or economically in a particular geographical area. But as far as age, you could be someone like Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie, he said, fucking guy's in his 70s. He still believes in forced wealth and income redistribution. Even with all this evidence around the world, like, doesn't work, Bernie, right? I mean, the newest iteration, the newest example is called Venezuela, Bernie, right? Look at that, Bernie. How can you be in your 70s and still think that that's a good idea? Oh, that's right, dude. No, he calls his form of socialism democratic. So rather than just, Maduro or anyone, a dictator doing everything, no, everyone should be able to vote. The majority should be able to vote to take your money away instead of one guy. What good is it if you have one guy demanding a portion of your income, or that you should work for the state and be a slave to the state? No, we should do this democratically and have the majority determine that you should be a slave to the state instead. Right? To me, I'm still a fucking slave to the state, Bernie. But apparently he hasn't figured this out after all those years, or chances are actually the truth of the matter is Bernie probably fully understands this, fucking unless he's got dementia. It's just that he's playing the politics game because he realized that people are splitting into these two camps, left versus right. You know, do I care about my social freedoms or do I care about my economic freedoms? In reality, like I've said so many times in the past, is why do you think you have to pick one or the other? As a libertarian, I think I should have all my social freedoms and all my economic freedoms. And I don't think anyone should have any capacity or ability to vote them away. Not one person or not millions of people.
I would also say, too, that, you know, at the age of 35, I think is when you start to kind of slow down and settle into manhood. I'd say come to full fruition at about that age and down. And then you could also make the argument, though, that below that age is when you're, yes, still coming into a manhood, coming to your ideas, but you're very ambitious, full of energy, and all that kind of stuff. Now, you got to think Alexander the Great was 32 years old when he died, and he expanded his empire from Greece right into the Northwest Indies. And, you know, that man did all that stuff under the age it would take to be able to run as the president. So sometimes I would say that a country needs a young, ambitious leader to push things to the limit and to maybe push civilization into the next leap. You know, sometimes the older generation get too comfortable with the status quo. Maybe they're not the type that would take the risk of maybe making our species interstellar, leaping to the next planet and expanding. You know, that takes young, ambitious men who are willing to die and take up the cause, you know, to hop on the boat like Columbus and stuff did and find the new world. You know, throughout history, these were usually young men who took on these tasks. So I don't know, I could kind of see, like, I get the idea of life experience. Yes, you don't want to put in some 25-year-old with no life experience who's been spoiled, but we should also be able to recognize the rare occasion of the few young people that set an example as ambitious leaders, and sometimes can maybe be more wise than their age, and recognize that and not always throw them under the bus. So I think if AOC had the ideology right, or, you know, and the population agreed with it, I don't think we should rule her out or say, no, you don't have a chance to become the president just because she's 29 or 28. Hey, let it go, right? I think we should. I don't know if I agree with that age limit now that I'm thinking into it.
Well, no, like I said, to me, that's the point, that no matter how many times in my life, almost every time actually, it always comes back to me is, hey, Matt, what happened?
What?
Oh, never mind.
I'm still here.
No, I just know what it is. I have the chat open up in another one, so I could hear you talking, but I couldn't see your voice. But what it is, I have the chat open in another one. Anyways, but what it comes down to is, like you said, it has to be all about the individual. That's why, to me, I mean, and I've listened to people from every different area of intellectual thought or their perspective or their ideology, and to me, it always comes back to the promotion of individualism and libertarianism, because I can't ever pretend that I know that every 29-year-old person is an ignorant moron that just don't understand the fundamental concepts of liberty. Maybe someone at 29 years old is actually more adept and more knowledgeable about this kind of stuff than someone that's in their 50s or 60s. So I shouldn't use age, right? I should deal with the individual. That's what I've basically done my whole life, which has actually been the most beneficial for me, not just for my own personal life, but for everyone I've ever interacted or engaged with, is because I treat those people. I've had conflicts in my life, and it might be because we have butted heads as far as what we stand for. But for most people that have ever met me, they realize that I'll treat you as an individual. I don't care what your race, your background, your age, your religion, your sex. I don't care about none of that. It's what you hold in your mind, what you stand for, and what you promote. So yeah, I agree. If she was this Alexandria Cortez, if she was a 29-year-old woman that had more grasp or more knowledge, and there are people out there, trust me, in their late 20s that have more of a grasp and a more of a fundamental understanding of what it is to be a free human being. If she was one of those people, then I'd say, who gives a fuck about these stupid age categories? I'd say, let the woman run. But once again, it would be based on her as the individual, not based on her age, but based on her and what she stands for, what her dialogue. Just like I say, I like to treat people based on who they are as a person, not on some underlying factor or fundamental that they had no choice. Like, so your age, your race, your sex, and all that bullshit. No, I agree. Don't make age the important, or race or sex. Make what those people fundamentally stand for, how they articulate it, and if they seem like they're people that are of competence, right? That's what matters most to me.
I think too, though, one of the big things that keeps government in control and allows this racket to continue is the monetary system. And we get rid of the purse, we get rid of a lot of the problems. And that's how the control is, through the Fed, the ability to print money, the ability to control the money. And like I like when Trump starts talking about the Fed and auditing it and talking just even talking about how it's got so much control. And this is why things like Bitcoin, or I'm hoping maybe it's not even Bitcoin, but it's another invention in the future that's going to come along and get rid of the ability for the government to be able to take your wealth so easily if you have it in these decrypted or these cryptid wallets and stuff that you can't just physically take your ones and zeros out of your bank account or physically take that 20 out of your wallet. So these technologies, I'm hoping, is going to fix a lot of this, because if they don't have the money, if they don't have the control, if these politicians don't have a salary or a way to fund these wars or to do, fund these programs to commit these evils, all these socialist programs, they lose the control. So, man, Bitcoin is such a powerful tool if people understood how valuable it could truly be, but it's also dangerous too, because a lot of people are scared to totally commit and go and flip and total digital, and because there's a lot of concerns that there's control, or there could be suspicion of any control in that as well. So the technology's got to be worked out better, but I'm just hoping along with the progression of us in our intellectual value to see that government taxation's theft, but hopefully along with the technologies advancing beside that mindset that makes us hopefully beat this status mindset and get rid of government in a peaceful manner. But I don't know. I think I see the left ratcheting up and getting more violent, more extreme, and I don't know. I'm pessimistic some days to think that it doesn't result to violence first before the peaceful transition. I mean, just look at Paris, man. What are they on? Like 4 months in now, rioting in the streets. Now over here in Canada and the United States, we don't get much of that media coverage. It kind of disappoints me. I got to go to Facebook and some of these other outlets to find any kind of live streams of what's happening in Paris. But the fact that that's not a story, man, 4 months in a row, these people have been fist fighting the cops in the streets, smashing out windows and banks. Like, they're basically in a little revolution over there. Besides gunfire, I mean, what else is missing from a full-blown revolution over there? It's insane. And that's happening in these little areas all around the world. And that's what the government and the media is very good at doing, is not covering these stories and keeping them hush. So while you're walking around in Canada and America thinking like, oh man, this is ridiculous, when are we going to get rid of these socialistic values? Man, there's freedom spreading everywhere. There's mini revolutions happening in the street. Besides the actual gunfire happening, we're there. It's happening. And I always like to say to people too, like, Hitler didn't come to fruition overnight. He didn't start putting Jews in gas chambers overnight. There was the lead up to that. And right now we're in that lead up, and people don't realize it because it's happening. It's the frog in the boiling pot syndrome, right? It's happening all beside us, and we're not realizing it. But when people say like, oh, one day there's going to be a civil war, I think we're in the civil war right now, the early steps of it. And that's why these podcasts and getting these ideas and principles that are very important. And what we try to stress is we need to have these conversations now, people, because without having these conversations now, the future leads to violence. And we don't want that. And the left and your enemies will try to point the finger at you and say, you're the one calling for violence. Of course, it's a common strategy they take. While they're punching you saying, hey, stop resisting, or you're being violent. Of course, they're trying to make the narrative look like you're the one who's the violent one. Meanwhile, they're the one that's violent. So don't ever let them say that when you have these conversations of, hey, maybe we should not go to a violent revolution. But, if you start violating people's rights to the extent where they're basically a slave and they're impoverished and government can kick down your door if you shit and wipe your ass too many times, then, yeah, people are going to get violent if you come down and put the boot down on their neck too much. And you have that conversation where you say if they cross the line, it's too much. They say, oh, you're dangerous because you're talking about these dangerous values and these principles. Well, people had these conversations back when the Nazis were going on. Maybe it wouldn't have gotten to the place where the Jews got rounded up. Conversation was needed in those times. But a lot of censorship happened back then. A lot of censorship is happening now, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, actually, perfect segue into I was just going to reference this McLean article, and that is this censorship. This is what's actually causing the ramp up and the escalation of violence. Whether, like I say, what you see predominantly is the blame on from those in the media. There's two fundamental groups now that have the blame for all the problems in the world today. So it's the religious fundamentalists from Islamicists, right? The Islamicists that promote the Islamic State fundamentals, or this overarching, I guess, more or less, actually, it seems like they're more or less form of collectivism or fascism itself, and in comparison and contrast to, I guess, what they say is like far right extremism. And I definitely recognize that there is such thing as collectivism and far right extremism. The problem, though, when you have articles such as this out of Maclean's, is it's basically, I mean, there's a way you can deal with it. Just like like I say, I always love bringing it down. You know this yourself, Matt. I always bring it down to, let's say, my two kids, right? We're fighting because they are two completely different kids. Like, or my sons are two distinct individuals with their own way of doing things. They're both not conducive with each other as far as how they want to do things. But to me, if they had a difference or of agreement in how they want to do things, to me, I would say, you do your thing, you do your thing. As long as you're not forcing your shit on each other, trust me, you'll be okay. And you'll be much better psychologically and in your personal life if you just allow each other to coexist and live with and do their thing. And corrective measures will happen just by sheer fact if you're doing something that's not conducive for your personal happiness or for how you'll be accepted in your community or in your family. You'll correct those habits if it's beneficial to you. But what we see, this is a perfect headline to describe why this kind of rhetoric, and I get it, a lot of those in the established media today, they feel like they're no longer relevant, and rightfully so, because they've used politics as a means to an end, and now they realize that, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. You should have remained objective reporters, just putting information news out there and let people decide for themselves. But now they're having to double down on this kind of rhetoric. So it's a headline article, like I said, out of Maclean's News. Headline: it's time to take on far-right extremism. Opinion: far-right nationalists can no longer be thought of as a fringe group. They're leading one of the major terrorist movements of our time. And this is by Ahmed Sahi. Okay, so I mean, whether you agree with some of the words written within and contained within this article, which I'll say I'll definitely disagree. I can agree with a couple things, but fundamentally I disagree with a lot of it because it's, once again, it's playing this collective game. So they're saying far right extremism. What does that, once again, if you point to individuals, this is the problem with collectivism, right? If you try to make this overarching umbrella term as if far right extremism, and if I read in this article, which I won't do because I won't tie up people's time today with this kind of stuff, but they might even reference, such as the Yellow Vest movement, right? Now in Canada, a lot of the people contained within the Yellow Vest movement are just, well, I've worn a yellow vest or orange, depending on what year it was, because back in the day, it used to be orange, folks. In Canada, we had orange vests with a yellow reflective stripe or a greenish reflective stripe. Now they're yellow, more advanced, I guess. But either way, it's what yellow vest represents is blue-collar fucking people, right? Those that actually build the world. So when you try to suggest in these Maclean's articles, or a lot that you're seeing from CBC or some of these other political hacks, and they're trying to benefit economically because people will click on this stuff, right? But what you're doing is furthering this divide, and you're creating a scenario where the people that, so you say far right extremists, or if you try to put a hit piece towards people that are in the Yellow Vest movement or the Convoy to Ottawa, most of those people actually within those groups were just people that were caring about their own jobs, their own livelihood, and how they can sustain them going forward. But the minute you try to collectivize them and suggest they're all far right or they're extremists, well, now you've taken people that normally would probably talk to you in a reasonable manner and try to find some common sense argument or understanding where we should figure out what's best for you and what's best for me. But now you've painted them as extremists. You've made that blanket statement as a media outlet. So now the people are no longer going to trust you as a media outlet. And now they're going to look at everyone out there with a yellow vest and perceive them as racist or what. So now you've created a political or a societal divide that never happened, that never existed prior to this. And now I see this today where people are actually looking out there and looking at people in this construction field that are the ones that are taking care of their asses. And they're now having vitriol and hatred towards them because they perceive them as all just being a bunch of white nationalists or racists. the minute you start down that road, like, it's so counterproductive and so counterintuitive as far as if you understand what it is to be a free human being, or if you've ever had any personal engagements or interactions with others yourself. If you met a person, you know, let's see, in your personal life, that had white skin and said they were conservative, if the immediate response to that was, oh, well, you're a racist piece of shit, well, think about how that relationship would unfold subsequent to that. Now you've created an enemy where there was probably not a genuine enemy to exist in the first place. This, like I say, this is the only consequence of all this identity politics, or this kind of form of collectivism, is literally, well, it's not just the destruction of the individual, but it's going to lead to massive civil conflicts at some point in time, because people aren't going to play these games for much longer until they realize that the only way they're going to feel that they can push back against it is to join they're like, hey, if I'm part of the tribe, well, I might as well join the tribe, and now I'm going to see you as my opponent. Well, you've created an enemy that, like I said, should have never existed in the first place. Why do you want to create enemies? What's the point? What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, and I'm just reading the comments section here. I just wanted to reply to Crypto Frenchman. It says, conversation, yes. I don't think that the narrative or rhetoric that we are at the doorstep of a violent revolution is a good thing. It's actually quite dangerous for the ability of people to listen if they are terrified, because your message packs a hell of a punch. Now, I get where he's coming from, but I'd also want to pose the question to him right now. At what point is your line in the sand? And why are we not allowed to have that conversation? The people who founded these countries, these Western nations, people that have conquered empires, who've raised civilizations, who've created democracy, have had the conversation, and it wasn't fearful to have the conversation that at what point are you a slave? At what point do you have a tyrannical government? At what point is violent revolution the answer? Now, America was founded on that value. So the fact that Americans would shy away from that conversation seems strange, because the founding fathers understood, hey, in our time right now, we are considered terrorists. So I'm not calling for any kind of violence. All I'm saying is, where's the line, right? And we can obviously say that if someone's coming to your door and you're completely innocent, and they're just taking you and your family away and making you a total slave at a gunpoint, maybe that's your point. But also the question I'd also pose to people, a lot of people say, well, I won't do anything unless it happens to me, or someone's right there happening to me, right? And I would say to those people, if your strategy is to not act until it happens to physically you, then if I were your enemy, I would go slowly in the night and take out all of your neighbors one by one if I was a tyrannical government, and then leave you, right? And it's the strategy the same that, you know, they came for me, or they came for the communists, nobody said nothing. They came for this, nobody said nothing. They came for the capitalists, nobody, then they came for me. You know, if you don't stand up, then you won't ever, you'll just end up being a slave, and they'll come for you eventually. But we shouldn't be shy. The left uses violence on a daily basis in the real world. All the right does, all libertarians do, is have the conversation that, hey, we have a Second Amendment because if the government gets tyrannical. And it's like, oh, don't have any of these conversations or you get labeled a right-wing terrorist, a right-wing extremist, alt-right. But yet you see people like Kathy Griffin, give me the names. You see Antifa on the streets creating violence. Where are all these right-wing? Now you got this one random shooter. We can get into that conversation. You're there. And obviously nobody condones that. Nobody condones people just going into anything and mowing down innocent, unarmed people. The fact that anyone would try to make it seem that that's acceptable behavior, obviously not. Nobody's calling for that. And they're going to use that, obviously, and you see it already, labeling him as, oh, see, he subscribed to PewDiePie. Oh, well, he talked about he was a Trump supporter. And, you know, that's dangerous to how quickly that, oh, some crazy lunatic is linked or subscribed to someone. Now he's guilty. Well, maybe he drove there in a Dodge Caravan. Is now Dodge guilty and held responsible because their vehicle was used to drive this guy there? Like, come on, people, you got to draw the line there. And think of how many actions of violence the left has called. You got people like Hillary Clinton and open huge Democratic presidential candidates who've called for violence when, you know, if they go low, we go low, hit them when they're low. And, you know, there's all this talks, even with Trump he's had a little. I'll even criticize him in the election when he was running. There's times when he would say, some of the lefty protesters would get rowdy in his crowd. He'd say, "There'd be a time when we could knock them out, or I'll pay for the legal bills." There was a lot of talks of this stuff, and it's just conversations that shouldn't be so scared to have. And that's what, of course, the government and anyone in the ruling class will make you be too timid to have those conversations, because that works in their strategy. But having a conversation is different from doing what that guy did in New Zealand, and they'll try to make it look like the same. Oh, even having a conversation, you could do that. Absolutely not. There's a major distinction. And obviously a lot of people in a right state of mind can realize what happened in New Zealand was horrible, and everyone with a sensible moral code condemns it. And the only time violence is ever acceptable, if you understand libertarian values and principles, is in the act of self-defense. And that's all we ever call for, is the act of self-defense. And one more thing I just hit on, I want to say, he said, "I don't think the narrative or rhetoric that we're on the doorsteps of a violent revolution is a good thing." And I would say to him, hey, I don't want to believe that we're at the doorsteps either, but you're already taxed over half of your wealth depending on where you live. We have laws on the books that are clearly immoral. I mean, look at Canada for the example of marijuana, just simply that. So one night we throw people in cages like animals for the plant, and then overnight society realizes that, oh, it's immoral to do so. Maybe the plant is actually a good thing. Maybe it's immoral to even put someone in a cage for using a substance. Let the whole a concept of a free human being is having control over your body. And if you want to put stuff in it, whether it's harmful or good, well, if you're a free human being, you get that option. I mean, you should have the option to eat 5,000 McDonald's cheeseburgers. You should have the option to grab a thing of bleach underneath your dish, your sink or whatever. There's many things you could do to your body to harm yourself. But just because you use the substance doesn't mean we get to throw you in a cage. So society progresses, realizes it was immoral, and now overnight it's acceptable. So we see government makes these massive mistakes through their laws that harm people, put them in cages, and do more immoral acts. And we're not on the doorsteps of revolution. Look at Paris. I'd say they're on the doorstep of revolution. What are they missing? We're not quite there in America, but that's because in America they also have a Second Amendment. It's a different culture too. You couldn't have the Paris like you could in America. America's not going to revolt for 4 weeks or for 4 months straight the same way. That's why I see they're more resistant in America, because Americans know that when they cross that line, it's different. And that's why, America might be the last ones to revolt. Thank God, because they're the ones that might take it serious. Paris, you can't have guns. If those protesters had guns on the streets, there might be the first shot. It might look like Tiananmen Square. And, we are on the footsteps of a revolution. What does it take to not be on the footsteps? The government's spying on everything you do. Your wealth is taxed, like I said, at 50-something%. We have laws on the books that are clearly immoral and harm peaceful people. We have wars in the Middle East that are clearly how many presidents now got to go and be like, oh, we realized that the Iraq war was a mistake, or Afghanistan war was a mistake. Well, it's a mistake. You can say it's a mistake after, when you have hindsight, but you already dropped the bombs. You already killed the people. You already pissed off the hornet's nest. You now have created homegrown terrorism from stirring up that hornet's nest in the Middle East. So at what point are we not on the doorsteps, buddy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even understand why you would put that anyways, because I don't think, fuck, if you're paying attention to my channel or you're listening, who the hell among us is advocating for violence in any form anyways? Like, the way we look at it is just being reasonable human beings. Is when you're being oppressed and you recognize that's a reality, and that is a reality for a large, substantial portion of people, well, you have two choices: submit and conform, or violence. That's your only options other than speech. And as you probably recognize, crypto Frenchman, we're using speech here, right? If we were obviously the kind of people that were perceptible to using preemptive violence, I wouldn't be fucking making videos. I wouldn't be trying to help expand upon the philosophy of liberty and the non-aggression principle. I would just be one of these dipshits that would be out there. And you're not going to stop them. That's the other thing. All these people, come up with all the kind of the security measures. Matter of fact, you can create the biggest police state on the planet. And all it's still going to take is one individual to crack in one moment to make a decision in one moment that has not made a decision in the past to be violent, to choose that violence in the future, because we do have free will and a mind, right? Autonomous individual mind. So that can happen, like I say, even in a full-on police state where everybody is basically oppressed by some authoritarian overarching umbrella of power. You're still going to have violence. So to me and to Matt and people that promote individual freedoms and rights, what we're saying is stop using preemptive force towards us, and then you'll greatly reduce the potential of some point in time in the future of people that are normally peaceful. Because that's the thing with a libertarian, is, as Matt alluded to, I am the kind of person, I have been this my whole life, and anyone that's ever known me will tell you this with 100% certainty. I never go out to preemptively use force or violence towards people that haven't done me harm in the past or have done harm to me, at that particular time. So the more you try to hold people like myself to this ridiculous standard of just keep standing there and letting us constantly being oppressed and ruled over and having our economic prosperity plundered or derided or denied. Once again, you're basically blaming the victims and constantly somehow creating this pretense that I guess we should allow the authoritarians among us to keep propagating their own bullshit, where we either have to conform and submit or shut the fuck up. I don't want to play that game. And actually, I don't even think you, crypto Frenchman, I don't even think you would actually want that. So come on, we're not promoting violence here. But at the end of the day, if you're a rat backed in a corner, or if you're any one of these people, like I say, Islamicist or fundamentalist Christians or anyone else, white supremacists, my thing is, how about you start talking with these people instead of fucking pointing the fingers at them and insulting them constantly or playing these collective games? Because none of what you're doing, as you realize, is benefiting anybody. You're just escalating to the point where you're creating this scenario where someone's going to have to ramp up and step up to the point where, I guess nobody want to listen to my words. Nobody want to listen to what I got to say. Well, I guess the only way anyone's going to listen to me is if I do something violent. And that's why these fucking people are showing, like I say, whether it's the Islamicist or these Christian fundamentalists or these Western nationalists. If nobody is fucking listening to them, if nobody's engaging with conversation or having dialogue, either of these dipshits are all going to turn to, I guess if there's nothing but fucking submission or violence are my only two choices, I guess some of them will pick submission. But you got to recognize there's going to be a substantial portion of them that are going to choose, violence. I'm at least going to show that, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in too. They're standing up for what they believe. So like I say, libertarians are actually the ones that are out here playing referee. We're saying, I don't want violence. And I don't want submission. I want to engage in dialogue with people. Like I say, I don't even care much for talking with people that they would consider libertarians or anarchists, because most of the time we'll agree with each other. I actually would like to engage with people that actually have a completely opposite understanding of what it is to be a human being. That way we can actually engage in some dialogue, and hopefully I could put forth some premises and some fundamentals that will help steer them in that manner. I want to use the power of persuasion rather than violence. But once again, the media, the politicians, the ruling class, they seem to want to silence us and keep us locked up in these fucking fundamentals as far as identity politics, where I got to stick in this fucking collective, which I don't want to join a collective, or this. It's like, why do you keep forcing me to try to pick some fucking team? I don't want to pick a fucking team. I want to be able to dialogue, have conversations with people so that I can get them to understand how important it is to just be a free individual human being. So don't suggest that libertarians, that's a failure of your own intellect. If you're trying to suggest that me or Matt or anyone out here that promotes libertarianism are somehow creating a scenario where we're going to escalate something in some way. No, we're actually trying to de-escalate the situation and saying, let's get engaged in conversation so that we don't eventually run to our perspective political or ideological corners and ultimately get ready for the big battle royale. I don't want to get involved in that battle royale. I actually care about people's freedoms, not just my own, but my kids and their futures. And I've seen what has happened in the past. A lot of people had to have to watch and bury their children or their fathers or their uncles or their cousins or their nephews because idiots were unwilling to sit down and talk about and discuss these things properly. I think we should be much better further along, especially after the fucking reality of the 20th century. So don't accuse libertarians of doing anything other than trying to, give some semblance of reason and give at least some platform where we can come together. Because I've said to everybody, I don't care who you are, I'll talk with you. I'll get engaged with dialogue with you, no matter what you stand for. So don't ever make any accusations towards me that I'm trying to divide or create some violent revolution, because I definitely don't promote that.
Yeah, and I would say people like Cenk Uygur, or you get these people on the far left, what else do we got? I'm trying to think now. We got the Young Turks. You got maybe David Puckman or some of these other ones like that, progressive voices and stuff. The people you're criticizing all the time in your YouTube channels, are the people that attack Alex Jones. Have them on your shows. Have a debate. If this guy is such an idiot, if you can do the intellectual body slam on him, if you always laugh about these libertarian policies and we're kooks and lunatics, then have us and have these people you criticize that are your biggest enemies on your shows. That's why I kind of like about Joe Rogan, is at least he's willing to have people on that he agrees with, the people on he doesn't agree with for the most part. But these people on the left, have people on your shows that you massively criticize, have a conversation with them, and maybe that'll resolve these things, maybe not, but at least it'll show that you're willing to use the conversation and put your fist down and not result to violence, that you can hash these ideas out, and the better idea will win. So I don't know why people like that are the left are the first ones to never want to debate. Even Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admitted, at least the people on the right, they subscribe to both left-wing values and right-wing values, and then we come up with our opinions. But overwhelmingly, his users on Twitter who subscribe to left-wing channels and watch left-wing news only subscribe to those type of channels and didn't try any diversity. So have us on your shows. I know Young Turks, openly doesn't like Alex Jones. When's the last time they've been on their shows? Hardly ever, right? And it isn't because Alex doesn't want to have Cenk Uygur on. He would love to have him on because it'd make such for a good video watching them debate each other, maybe going off on each other, even getting angry. So, do it up. Have the conversations, guys. What are you so scared of? And it's clearly they don't got any kind of value behind their arguments. And, if anything, they're the ones censoring and ones calling for violence quicker because they're the ones unwilling to come to the table and have a conversation. So make sure you point the fingers in the right direction when you start leveling those kind of threats.
I like the Cenk Uygur.
Cenk Uygur? I think Alex Jones and Cenk Uygur in a boxing match.
I'd love to fucking see that.
I want to see it because I think Alex, a little pit bull, would come out swinging on him. It'd be great.
that would be a sight watching for sure. I'm just resharing it again because I don't know, for some reason I'm not seeing a whole lot of people in the chat today here for some reason. That's the other thing, actually. I wonder too, and maybe we should point this out in this video and maybe get some responses. But is it because we're doing this Sunday? Do we have like a lot of Christians or something that pay attention to us? And maybe because I'm doing it at Sunday on a time where a lot of people might be in church. I don't know, because if so, we might have to change up the times at some point in time. But I don't know. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people in the comment section here for some reason.
Yeah, definitely on later on in a Sunday, or even probably be better. I know usually noon on a Sunday or 11, people are chilling or out and about doing their errands before they got to go back to work.
Yeah, maybe we didn't pick a good time for doing these podcasts. Gato's got another comment. The left will never do that. The left lost the argument 50 to 60 years ago. The tactic now is to shut down speech and to change the voting demographic. That's 100% true. Gato definitely understands it. Hey, whoa, cool setups, you two. Hey, look you see who's in the chat there, Matt?
Oh, yeah, Aaron. Yeah.
Hey, your bro. What's up? What up, Double A? That's awesome. Yeah, by the way, folks, if you're into music, let me just tell you, my son, Aaron, he's awesome for making some. Oh, wait, no, that was a mess up. I put awesome for making great music, and he does basically everything. He's done country music, rock, he's Metallica covers, hip hop, rap, pop, the guy, he just loves music, and he puts out lots of stuff. Well, he's got a few channels. Aaron Say What is well, he's actually a verified YouTuber. I think he's got about roughly around 140,000 subscribers on that one. That's his gaming channel, but he has a music section because he's contributed music on that channel over the years. He also has Youth Nation, which is his new endeavor. Actually, it's an old endeavor actually that started him and another friend of his back in the day started Youth Nation. But he kind of went off on his own. They went their separate ways, and now they're back together, and they're creating new music. Like I say, Youth Nation on YouTube. Check that out. Aaron Say What, especially if you're one of those younger people that are into gaming and commentary for games. And he also has another one called ASW TV, because apparently I was kind of out of the touch and out of the loop with this, but he was much more understanding as far as, I guess, modern pop culture as far as music. I guess Korea has now taken the reins and seems to have some very popular groups over there, and it's taken off, and a lot of people are now paying attention to what's called K-pop. And actually, that was the one thing I did agree with him. It's kind of a shame, because me as a Gen Xer, I grew up at a time when pop music, actually it was at the pinnacle when I was growing up. The 80s and the 90s, like, not just for popular music, but like, rebellious kind of music and inspirational kind of music. That was what actually was one of the guiding forces and things that actually inspired me, and why I'm very big proponent of music to this day. Is it was great, because that's the thing. Culture is not just politics or academia. You also get your culture. You also get your fundamental principles and values from the culture, as far as your music, the movies, the television shows that you watch. You get a lot of those understandings as far as your morality, or those fundamental aspects of what it is to be a person that deals with other people. You get that from your culture, and culture is definitely part and parcel with the music and the pop culture of the day. And I'm very saddened to see that it seems to be people in a lot of these countries. I'm happy to see that K-pop, or the people in Korea, are now stepping up the game and being inspirational leaders under their own banner and in their own country. But I'd like to see that happen once again, because, like I say, well, baby boomers, they had, they were the first generation of sex, drugs, rock and roll, or rebelling against the man, right? That was the whole thing. That was the pretense of that culture initially. Then Gen Xers took that and ramped it up and did it in their own form and made it their own way of doing things. Well, that's the part that I'm seeing today. Is I'm not seeing the millennials stepping up to the plate and doing that. Or maybe there are actually, maybe I shouldn't blame the millennials per such, but think about it. Every generation that has stepped out onto the landscape as far as affecting culture in the arts, well, they required and relied on the people like their parents or their grandparents to not just to promote them and sustain them, but to invest in them economically. Maybe what we're seeing out there today is apparently a lot of generations today aren't willing to pull forward or push forward their recognition and acknowledgement of another generation that needs to have this ability to do their own form of artwork, to push against the man, and to create their own form of rebel culture. So we need to really respect. Now, my son is just one, and as of course I'm a little bit biased, but he's already written and produced a lot of songs that have some great inspirational messages. You don't have to be a libertarian, but you can get inspiration from people that are producing and creating music that are creating you or enticing you to be ambitious in some form, or to have some self-esteem or self-regard, where you feel that you are better than just the collection of yourselves, and you can make something better of yourself. My son has been doing this for many years, and I wish a lot of people would acknowledge and recognize what he's been doing, instead of a lot of us pay attention to politics like I do. And of course, we should set certain times of our day aside for dealing with politics and philosophy. But also we have to have that off time, that downtime, where we're just enjoying our culture and all that it entails, and promote, the people that put forth and promote the cultural values that we hold dear. And my son is stepping up the plate to do that. So like I say, Youth Nation, ASW TV, and Aaron Say What. Check those channels out. I guarantee between the three of them, you'll find something there that will interest you, and you'll see that, yes, he's put out some great content.
Yeah, so one of the things, I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but what are your thoughts on the government potentially getting involved in censoring Twitter, and, making it, not censoring Twitter, but making it so they have a First Amendment rights, right? Like, so they can't censor people on the right. and actually government involvement in that, because I know this is a huge conversation with libertarians because we don't like government involvement or government regulation, but there is this conversation of them being such a big platform and having a monopoly, and you know, it's dangerous for them to only censor one side. So I just want to know your thoughts on it. I don't know if I've ever had that conversation yet with you, really figured out what your opinion is on it.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Twitter, well, any of these social media platforms, you have two options. You have to be the proprietor of the platform, which means that actually, if they would have stick to it, that they're just proprietors of a platform, right? So they just created the venue for people to propagate whatever they have to say. If you stick to be unbiased, right, which was their original business model, then I think that's conducive for the flourishment of lots of freedoms, and let the market, let people decide what's more conducive. So your vote doesn't rely on you going to a ballot box. It's your thumbs up, your thumbs down, your participation, your viewing of all these contents, right? So on Twitter, let each individual, if we care about this pretense of a democracy, then let people choose what is best or suitable for them. But Jack is more or less trying to skirt or play this game, especially when he introduced the concept of, well, it should be a human right. Well, the minute you started any equation or factor where you're suggesting that this platform, so Twitter, should be a human right so you can speak, well, then you've put that in the area of legalese of the state. And once you've done that, now you have to actually hold yourself to a completely different standard. Right now, like I say, you don't have to be the referee. If you just created, like, you know, if I build a house, let's say, right, I can go build a house for someone. What happens after the people move into the house, how they treat each other once they moved into the house, right? As long as I've set up the rules that, you know, with this house where you're not allowed to burn down your neighbor's house, you're not allowed to, right? So we have rules and fundamentals that will make it so that they can only be conducive to the rules confined within their own house. But on Twitter, if you want to be someone on that platform, now they're trying to turn this into a political realm where it's a positive right. Well, if you do that, now you have to be the referee. Jack is basically setting himself up where he now has to be the referee and final arbiter to dictate and determine who should have a voice or a say on the platform. I would never want to place myself in that position, but I understand what Jack's doing. He actually doesn't have the willingness to do that himself, or even to propagate that to some of his subordinates within the organization. And he even said, well, we're probably going to have to get regulated by government. So basically what Jack's doing is saying, I want to listen, I lack the capacity or the willingness or the bravery to be the one to arbitrate and dictate what's being allowed to propagate on my platform. I want to place that in the hands of some third-party arbiter, someone in government, so that I can create the atmosphere that I'm not the one that's restricting people's speech, someone else is. Jack, the best thing you can do is like YouTube. YouTube is probably one of the best platforms, other than, although I've seen some failures already in that platform as well. But just let people do their thing and let the market be the determiner, the final factor that determines whether they're doing something inappropriate or not. So when people say, oh, we need Facebook to crack down on white supremacists. First of all, if they're only using words, let them say it. You don't have to agree with what they're saying. Now, if they get to where they're soliciting violence, like if you're one of these white supremacists, you're saying, I want you to go kill this person. Well, that's a crime. And the social media platforms should never have any ability to intervene into that. Just report the people to, you know, your local police or somewhere that actually deals with crime. Then you don't have to create this atmosphere or this platform where now these CEOs of these social media organizations have to be the final arbiters or dictate and determine what's right or wrong. No, that should be always left open to interpretation. And once again, the only time that should be anything as far as rules or regulations involved, as far as silence or suppress people, is if someone has done or said something that goes against, you know, pre-existing laws in regards to, you know, initiating violence or the promotion of violence. Like I say, these rules are already on the book. So the fact that Jack Dorsey is now more or less suggesting that we should have government, I guess, come in and be the final arbiter to dictate and determine what's allowed to be said on the platform, that's a failure on his own part. Jack, step up the plate.
I look at it like, you know, Jack, the laws, the Commonwealth laws that have been established today on speech have taken years and years of high intellectual men and lawyers to hash out, to come up with the best way to do things. You're not going to come in overnight and decide you're going to be the policeman of language and determine what is good law and what is illegal and what needs to be censored. Just go by just go by what the laws already have on the books. It's too difficult to already try to police it yourself. Just like my dad said, just go with what the law already has on the books. But I'd also like to get into, so I see the media now jumping all over Trump, like your big mainstream media, CNN and that type of stuff, are getting on because in an interview he said Trump does not see white nationalism as a rising threat. So if obviously, now the race baiters on the left are jumping on this and covering it as a story, and oh look, he's defending white nationalists. He's saying that they're not that bad, and just how the media spins it is so absurd. And it's just a clear fact that white nationalism terrorist attacks are not on the rise. The concept, the first terrorist attacks that in the West we've ever even really heard of were usually done by Muslims. And in comparison, there's Muslims attacking Christians in these Middle Eastern nations across the old pond there on a daily basis that you never hear. If you go just start Googling, Christian church attacked in the Middle East, or, just do some Googling and you'll find articles where a lot of these things happen on a daily basis that aren't covered. And, that's the major divide I find between the two religions, Christianity and Islam, is one seems to be more turn the cheek, love thy neighbor, try to be more peaceful, not be a slave. The Christians still believe in self-defense and stuff like that, but they seem to be more of a peaceful religion than the Muslim religion. That's why you see that divide. And a blatant example of this is the fact that you can bash Jesus like to like crazy. You can mock him, make fun of him, draw him, whatever, but you try to draw Muhammad or bash Muhammad, their God, that stuff leads to terrorism, or you definitely couldn't do that openly in some of these Middle Eastern nations the same way that you could bash Jesus in a Christian nation. And that's just common sense. We know that by boots on the ground, by people traveling to these different cultures and nations. Go do it. Go bash Muhammad in one of these Sudan or Middle Eastern countries, and you let me know how it turns out for you. And then you come here to one of these Christian nations and bash Jesus and see the difference. Some people might yell at you. You might even get a punch in the face by some redneck, Jesus Bible thumper, but it will not be the same treatment that you'll get in a Middle Eastern country the same way if you bash Muhammad. I mean, the South Park was a good example of this too. South Park, I always loved watching South Park growing up. Very political cartoon show. Very, not at first you'd think it'd be for children, but no, it's actually strictly for adults because it's pretty nasty and raunchy stuff at sometimes. But even them who pushed the limits of free speech and challenged things in being shown on television, they were never allowed to show Muhammad. That's the one area that they got shut down and censored. But they would make gay Jesus jokes, and they'd have Jesus fighting as a superhero and stuff, and it was pretty funny, comical stuff, and even Christians sometimes would get a laugh about it. But that was the one area when it came to Muhammad, no, they had to censor that stuff out. That wasn't going to fly. That would create potential terrorist attacks on some of these embassies over in the Middle East. So, they wouldn't dare take that risk. So there's definitely a difference in culture there.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because when you mention that, it just takes off the top of my head when you mention this stuff about this divide is the reason why you're seeing it have to happen in the alternative sphere is because no one in the established media is actually being a proper referee as far as if you're going to get engaged in the dialogue politically. If they were being unbiased or at least objective in some form, matter of fact, Trump would have never even come to be president. You wouldn't see a lot of the stuff that's happened in the Western world today if it wasn't for the fact that those in the academia, in the established media, or the political class don't keep trying to play this kind of collective game where they're just picking winners or losers socially or in the economy. Today, what it is people recognize instinctively, and it seems to be predominantly today, especially if you're, come on, you have to know this. If you're white male, especially middle-aged white male, and if you're a capitalist, all about free market and, you're, I guess, considered today, like you're considered the worst person according to people in the media. So because there's this absence or this gap in someone's ability, like when you watch CNN or some of these or MSNBC or in Canada CBC or CTV, when you hear that nobody on these stages, even when they bring in, it's funny. I watch CBC and stuff, not because I want to, but because I always have to pay attention to what my opponents are saying, right? Hello. I like to be informed. I like to know what people that want to socially and economically enslave me, I want to know what they're saying. But when I see them bring on a panel to discuss a topic that has a profound effect on my social and economic life, and the only people they have up there, even though they have multiples of them, but every one of them are repeating or regurgitating a central planning narrative. So like I say, they have, well, they call them conservatives or NDP, or liberals in Canada. In the US, they call them Democrats or Republicans, but they all keep talking the same line of government is the ultimate means to an end, and they should always have this capacity or power. Now, they all get to have their own way of doing it. So, Democrats, they want to, like I say, more about economic enslavement. The Republicans maybe want to do more social enslavement. But like I say, the absence of anyone sitting up there and saying, well, we should have, like I say, you'll have objective reporting, or you'll know you live in a world where there's not just biased opinions, but that they're actually searching or pursuing the truth, is when you hear people like myself sitting on the stage, not just in academia, but when these political pundits in the media or these politicians are spewing the rhetoric, if they're willing to sit down and listen to people like myself, and the kind of stuff that I talk about, it's like I'm outrageous, although we're always suggested, think about it. It's the political media class that keeps saying that libertarians are just extremists and outrageous. But if you listen to what I got to say, and if you pay attention to the videos I put out there, like I say, I could get 10,000, 20,000. I've had 40 plus 50,000 views, not quite 40, in the high 40,000. But my like to dislike ratio is usually way higher than I've ever seen for most people that would consider themselves on the political scale. So people that listen to what I got to say predominantly and overwhelmingly not just agree, but accept that this is just the basis of what it is to be a free human being. So I don't consider it outrageous to stand for or promote the fundamental aspects or the philosophy of liberty. The fact that someone in the media or these political or these parts of the ruling class try to put forth and present this message or narrative that it's us that are extremists and they're the ones that are all caring that. And like I say, until you've seen them come together, engage with people like me, where I can push back in real time against what they're suggesting or alluding to as far as what I stand for, until you've seen that play out, just always understand and recognize that they're trying to function in a realm where they want to give you one bit of information without giving you any other pretense of that information, so that you only learn in a kind of tunnel vision type of mentality where you're only getting the information that they're putting forth and presenting you. Me, like I said, I'm more than willing to say what I got to say, but I'm so firmly confident in the kind of things that I talk about and the things that I espouse that I'm more than willing. Like I say, I'll bring on a fascist, I'll bring on a socialist, I'll bring on a communist, I'll bring on a big government proponent, a liberal, conservative, Democrat, NDP. I don't care who you are as far as how you identify on the social or economic or political sphere or stage or spectrum. I'm willing to openly engage in dialogue with you because I know where I stand. I have a grounded basis for the fundamentals and principles that I hold dear. The fact that these people are unwilling to engage with people like myself, or even give me a voice, tells you that they're standing on a house of cards or in quicksand, because the rhetoric can't even support or sustain the weight or the gravity that they try to put into it, because they know that it doesn't work the minute anyone shines a big mirror or gives anyone the pretense of a different or alternative opinion, which is why they always silence and suppress or try to shut down every venue, whether Jordan Peterson or I just heard about Stefan Molyneux. Him and Lauren Southern were out there in Vancouver and they were going to have a thing and they were shut down once again. Why? It's just words. It's just a couple people standing on the stage saying some words. If you're willing to go through that much trouble to silence and suppress those people, well, it means you're so scared of the words that they got to say that you deemed that to be something that you should be able to silence, which tells you that you're functioning from a perspective that you don't even have any confidence in your own position if you're unwilling to allow it to be challenged.
Yeah, well, on another note, though, to switch topics to something different, isn't it crazy how nowadays the LGBT tranny issue has been pushed to an extent that you're seeing these males just basically converting that day to a female and winning all these sporting events.
Oh my God.
You're seeing stories of them winning like cycling and running and wrestling, and yeah, now you're even seeing them getting into physical wrestling matches or UFC style fight when it's biologically a man who's just transitioning. And unbelievable that feminism has gotten so extreme that it's reverted to men punching women.
To me, it's just so. Actually, before I answer you there, Matt, Aaron said, and it's something I probably should do. So something I was going to mention, because Aaron's really good at this social media stuff to you, when you go live on this channel, to help get viewers over here, post a community post link into this channel on your main channel. So keep that in the back of your mind in case I forget, because yeah, it's something I probably should have done beforehand. But yeah, as far as these sports venues, like what the fuck is wrong with these people that would even let, like, come on. And even feminists are starting to step up and say, wait a minute, this ain't so fair. And of course it's not going to be fair. You're going to get a bunch of men that get to say, and this is the other thing, folks, those of you that are playing identity politics, be very thankful that people like myself aren't willing to play your fucking stupid game. Because, man, if I wanted to play your collective game, you guys have all, and girls or Zers or Zs or whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, you've already created this area. And under the Kathleen Wynne liberals, I could go out there and determine tomorrow that I'm a girl, right? Because apparently that's legal in Canada now. I can change my sex whenever I want. There's gender fluidity. I could think about how many times I could use that for nefarious reasons. Thank goodness I'm actually an upstanding guy that would never want to use that for nefarious reasons, but you definitely recognize there are people that do. Look at these venues. And actually, as much as I don't want to do it myself, but maybe a lot of guys should go out there and use this fucking pretense.
Hey, you know what, though? I'll tell you one thing I'm really worried about with that, though, is, I'm worried that Andrew Scheer knows that he might lose to Maxime Bernier in the upcoming election. So at the last minute split decision, he'll change his gender to a female and say he's going to be the first female premier, and that might give him the advantage to win. So I'm a little worried for Maxime because of that concern.
Well, Scheer could very well actually, if he put a wig on and threw on a dress, he might very well pass. No, but seriously though, but this is something that I think, like I say, this is actually one of those areas where I think the beautiful thing and lots of geniuses out there, like I say, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, a lot of these people have already talked about this. And this collective identity bullshit or this identity politics, it's like I said, not only is it going to fucking circumvent and cause a lot of harm to these people that purport it, but eventually they're going to be the ones that will be, once they seen that coming at them, they're going to be the first adopters to start to, they're going to become libertarians real quick. Because like I say, I can't imagine the day where, oh, you're going to keep this going. So now guys will all go turn towards these things where they're just going to change their gender and compete with women that are, I mean, come on, physical prowess, folks. There's so many areas that guys will definitely dominate in those. But as much as I don't promote it, but hey, if you play those games, like I say, the minute you see this happening, what we're seeing today, like in the wrestling world or a lot of these places, heavy, like powerlifting, once you see that all men now are now dominating these spaces by sheer fact that they're claiming to be women, I mean, these people are actually the best proponents for libertarianism that I think have ever, they don't want to do it, but by sheer fact of their own insanity, of their own stupidity, of their own short-term thinking, like I say, they're actually the ones that are helping add ammunition to libertarians as far as what we stand for, because they're going to see at some point in the time, you're actually going to cause, especially for women. I mean, I think about it like, I have a wife, I have nieces, I have aunts. I would never want to see them have to compete against a man. They've put in all this hard work and effort because they're competing in their gender space as far as, professional sports, let's say, right? Or Olympics or something like that. They work that hard only to be now put up against someone that not only worked just as hard, but have a natural physiological or biological advantage that supersedes anything that they could ever do, right? And then with powerlifting, that's a definite, and wrestling, those are two areas that, yeah, sorry, ladies. And as much as I love you ladies, and I know especially if you're competing with each other, I love watching those battle royales for sure. You know, let people like Ronda Rousey and stuff. Come on, these are ladies. Actually, they could kick a lot of guys' ass. But if you put yourself in these categories and then you put a man in there to compete against them, it's probably not going to work out for you. And it's not that I would even be one of those guys that would be proponents cheering on the guy or the gender bender or the gender fluid person. I would recognize that I don't even want to respect or promote that. So actually, you're destroying not just the incentives of the people that are participating, but even the onlookers. I don't even want to watch a biological man with a fucking dress or a skirt on or a fucking wig beating up on women or dominating women. Why the fuck would any one of us think that that was ever going to be a good idea? That's not a way to equalize things.
Well, 2 points to it. It's all just the oppression Olympics. And I wish they could put on their own little Olympics and they could just all scream and yell at each other about how they're oppressed. One could yell that, oh, well, you're a male and I'm a woman, so I'm oppressed. And then one could yell that, well, I'm a black woman. And then one could yell, well, I'm a gay black woman. And it could just be oppression Olympics and they could see who's the most oppressed. But to the second point, too, is these some of these women who want, you know, equal rights, they all scream equal rights and gender equality until the Titanic sinks, right? And then equality goes out the roof. Then it's women and children first, right? No, we understood at a biological level that women produce the children, that it's a more invested interest, that one male can impregnate multiple women and keep the human species going. So a woman is more valuable in that manner than a man because she's the one that continues the species. She's the one that has the child. So men it used to be men understood that women were respected and were the queens and were put on pedestals and were valued, and so much so that we leave them home with the children and we would go out and lose our lives and fight for them and die in wars and stuff like that. You know, that's how it predominantly was throughout history. Maybe not so much in modern history, but throughout history, it was predominantly men fighting in these wars. So it was never this sexist mentality like the modern historians like to try to make men out to be these terrible misogynists and hate women. It was never like that. You know, like I said, when the Titanic went down, men realized when women and children get on the boats first, they fill up the majority of the seats, and then men go down with the ship, or a few men may survive, but that's how the species goes on. It's a biological understanding. It has nothing to do with sexism. And when you have that biological understanding, we are men admitting that we are the disposable sex. So, I mean, what is more an admission than that? What is a more admission that women are amazing, that women are put on pedestals? And, you know, obviously we respect them, and we respect them so much that we want to shade them and harm them from environments that are shitty, like some male job positions are. Some, you know, going into war. You know, when a man says something as simple as, you know, we don't really want women in the military, it's not to say that we're demeaning them or making them any less of a person. It's we don't want you guys to be put in danger. We don't want you guys to see your friends die around you. We're shading. It's protecting. It's the ultimate. Now, they'll try to say that is toxic masculinity. Well, if it is, it's toxic masculinity that's helped you women continue to survive throughout the years and prosper and be to where you are today, which is beautiful. And toxic masculinity, when the Titanic's going down and it's you sailing away back into freedom, into warmth, into being alive, toxic masculinity is what goes down with the ship and drowns, you know? So I don't see how that's very toxic. It seems you guys got a pretty good deal there. And when did it become such a bad thing? I always really hate the idea of women who bash other women who are just mothers or stay-at-home moms. That is the best job in the world. You have the most important job. Your job is literally to recreate another human being, to grow him up to be a moral, standing human being, and to conduct himself in the society that he contributes, that he does the right thing, that he progresses, that he makes the world a better place. That's the most important job in the world. And a lot of the world problems today, the Stalins, the Hitlers, and all these type of people, these lunatics, the people that are ruling our governments today, they're creating a lot of the problems today, all stems down to shitty childhoods and parents not putting in the time. A lot of this stuff is childhood trauma and all that kind of stuff. So we understand the value of mothership because we understand if you have good mothers doing good jobs and raising good children peacefully and putting in the work, that's what's going to lead to a prosperous, peaceful, free nation. So that's the most important job. Screw all you women in the working class. Now, I'm not saying that to be mean, but who look down at women who are sitting home with the children. Yeah. That's the best job in the world.
Yeah. I just want to respond to, this is actually a great comment. It's something I wanted to actually cover a little bit. So I'm glad that Coach TMAC brought this up. I was going to mention that it's a shame that Maxime Bernier can't just create a Sunday afternoon live stream when it was so easy for you and your son to create one. And you know what? This is actually one area, and maybe I should. See, I'm the kind of person, as a libertarian, I don't reach out, and this is actually maybe a little bit of a failure on myself. I don't try to put forward the resent to tell other people how to do things. I do my thing my way, and I see what works best for me. But I never think that I have this, authority. And I guess that's what it is to be a libertarian. Is I don't want to tell people how to do things. But I definitely agree that I think not just Maxime, but even the people that's within the party, they're doing, I guess, decently. But when I compare and contrast it to, when Ron Paul was running as a presidential candidate in 2008, 2012, all the great videos and inspirational messages that were put out and presented by all the supporters and propagated by the people that were part of the Ron Paul Liberty movement, I'm not seeing that quite happen in the same way in Canada, and I'm a little bit saddened as a consequence and as a result. Now, I would gladly step up the plate, but no one from it's the thing. Hey, let me just say this first and foremost. I am a founding member of the PPC, and I have contributed to help them. And because I am a libertarian, and I think they should understand this if you're in the group there, if you're part of the Maxime Bernier group and part of the PPC. As a libertarian, I'm not going to fucking beg any of you dipshits, right? If you want my help, well, you got to ask for it. Now, don't expect me. I already do everything for free. So if you need my help, I can definitely help Maxime. And I can help them to talk to people like me. We can actually discuss things properly, get down to the nitty-gritty of the issues, but you have to be brave and bold, and you have to have a bunch of people underneath you that are propagating this stuff properly. And I don't think Maxime has a very good team as of yet. I know Maxime is probably working hard himself, but, even though I'm a libertarian and I definitely care about the individual, but I also recognize that, any endeavor requires a lot of individuals, right? So this is the thing. It doesn't mean you have to be a collectivism is a pretense of top-down authoritarianism, but a group or people that are aligning or standing or promoting things of similar values or principles, that doesn't have to be a top-down authoritarian collective, but that could be a voluntary collective. But that collective should still exist to the point where we are standing in support of each other and helping as best as we can. I even recognized early on, and it took people like Dan Dix, but I followed through. I carried and I pushed that forward. Dan Dix helped to promote and support me, which in turn helped me to get a whole lot of better or larger audience, which allowed me to propagate my message to more people, which caused them to be able to propagate their message and spread that to other people. Like I said, that helps us all. But Maxime and the PPC doesn't seem to be, I don't think, reaching out enough to people like myself or Frank Vaughn, or there's so many of us out here that are right here at your disposal if you need us, but you have to reach out to us and you have to be willing to engage so that people recognize that you're not just some politician standing on a stage. You're someone that's willing to engage with the populace, with the grassroots of the movement. And Maxime hasn't done that quite as much so far. And maybe if he gets a chance to see this, because I know he follows me on Twitter and stuff. Maxime, if you see this, please, it's incumbent and it's very important for you to reach out to the grassroots and to engage, not on social media, I've seen you've been on CTV and CBC, and I'm glad you are. So at least those that watch mainstream media are seeing what you stand for and what you promote. And I respect you for that. But you have to deal with those of us in the social media or in the alternative media as well, or those who stand for and promote the same fundamental values and principles that you do, and let us engage, because then we actually create that kind of more close-knit environment where we feel a sense of belonging. But if you keep it too abstract, too much where it's you just putting out your message without being actively engaged or having, a big family or a big tent type of structure, I don't think it's going to be as conducive as you probably would hope for. So I can help you in that endeavor. I know the history. I've watched how this stuff unfolds. I know what to do. You just got to reach out, and I'll help you out if I best I can.
Well, my message to Maxine would be, yes, you got to put your message out through not only the mainstream media but the alternative media, because it's the alternative media that's more favorable to your principles. So you can go ahead and you can talk and do a sit down with CBC, but they're your competition, the conservatives, the liberals who are going to be running against you. CBC is going to be more leaning towards their values, and they're going to put a more favorable story for those candidates. Rather, for you, they're going to try to attack you and your ideology and who you surround yourself with. So if you're only talking on their platforms, their audience is going to get their political sway, which is not in favor of you. It's the alternative media guys who are the ones who love you and love the principles you stand on, who are coming on their platforms, are not only going to be talking heads for you, but are also the actual people that enjoy what you talk about and the principles that you adhere to. And, they're the following they're going to gain the following for you that you're going to need to give you that advantage. You don't want to play in the alternative or the mainstream media's game. They control that narrative. You don't want to play there. As much as Donald Trump doesn't want to admit, it was Alex Jones and a lot of these other alternative guys that helped get him for sure elected. I think it played a key factor. And if Maxine drops that ball, I definitely see Andrew Scheer taking all the advantage in the limelight. I really see Andrew Scheer as being the next one. Sad to say, he seemed to be the next major threat, because I don't see the government, I don't see Canadians going back to liberal. They hate Trudeau so much, it's not going to happen. I don't see them going Green or NDP either. So I really think they're going to flip it and give it back to, every year we do this back and forth, conservative, liberal, liberal, conservative. I think it's going to flip right back to Scheer. And he's so milquetoast. I mean, there's no principles behind him. He's just going to be like a buttered up Trudeau, just maybe a little harder on some carbon tax and a few things. Big whoop. Maxine has actually got some principles behind him, a good platform. So Maxine, please make sure to speak to the alternative media. Do not just play their game and sit on the mainstream media, because they're gonna, when an election time comes, they're not going to push favorable stories out there for you.
Yeah, actually, Gatto was agreeing with you on your message as far as like women, like saving the species as a value argument tens of thousands of years ago. Today, women are the majority, so there isn't a rare debate. But anyways, so I agree with you there, but I just wanted to move on. So actually, this one that I was referenced earlier, Coach T-Mac, he prefers to be either referenced as Coach or T-Mac. So Coach, right on. Thanks for your contribution here, and I appreciate you watching our podcast today. A little bit further down, I did see, where was that? I got to scroll up here a little bit. Oh, I have to disagree with your son. The Titanic was incredibly sexist. Oh, yeah. I was saying that men are worth less than women. That's true, unfortunately. It was a horrible thing to do. You're not worth less than being a man. So when you're talking about, chauvinism, right? So, during the Titanic, whether in the real life or, as the subsequent video or a movie that came out, what was it, in the 90s, I think it was. But yeah, men basically stuck behind while women and children first, right? But that's actually, I still to this day, and I've thought about this intrinsically and very delve down deep into it, but I still to this day think that it's still a good way to adopt things as far as propagating the species, because we definitely need, like, women the ones that have that birth canal. So to propagate the species as much as I'm definitely needed and necessary, but we definitely want to at least create an atmosphere where women, because they don't have the physical prowess, they are protected in some form. And not just, like I say, not just for their own interest, but for my interest as a father, as a male. I definitely want to protect the women and make sure that they can procreate and propagate the species or my genealogy or my bloodline. And that requires, at the end of the day, if it comes down to the three of us, my son, my wife, or me, it sucks at the end of the day for us men, but I'll gladly, I'll sacrifice myself so that I can at least propagate my species, and I need that to happen. So, not that we should ever be. That's the other thing. Without government, for the most part, we don't have to make those kind of decisions. It'll happen naturally, just by the the natural course of life, because we all live and die. But we should never be placed in these ridiculous situations where we have to make this decision: should I live or am I? I think we should live. Actually, the best way to propagate our species is for both of us to come together and be able to give them two very fundamental aspects of the yin and the yang, or the male and the female, or the feminism and the masculinism, and teach them to adopt both areas, whether you have sons or women, so that you don't have sons that think solely all about what it is to be a man, but you also give them at least a fundamental understanding of the female experience and how they should respect a same with, like I said, a daughter. I want them to definitely respect and appreciate the fact that they're a woman, and do best what they can do in that particular realm, and do whatever they choose that they want to do, but also respect what the man brings to the equation as well. And like I say, it's not just about biology, because we live in the modern world where we've advanced our minds. Well, it's about how we adopt in our psychology, so that we have these kind of contractual agreements, not written, but and not even verbal, just by sheer fact that we understand who we are as individuals, that we all bring something to the table, and we have to respect each other for what we do bring. And you don't have to be the same as me. I don't have to be conducive with everything that you stand for, you believe in, as long as, like I said, at the end of the day, you're not forcing or imposing your ideas on me, and I'm not forcing or imposing my ideas on you, but that we can bring both of our ideas together and both of our sexes together, and not just procreate and propagate our species, but to make the species that we bring forward much better adapted and evolved to the point where they make the human experience an even more conducive to freedom and liberty going forward. Because at the end of the day, that's what we should be doing, not just for ourselves, but for everyone that comes after us, our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids, or any other future generations, is to pass forward this amazing thing that we as humans have developed in our own mind as a concept. Right? Like, that's what separates us from nature, is that we believe that we should treat each other with respect and dignity, and respect our individuality and our sovereignty. And we don't just go use preemptive violence as a means. We use our words. That's the beautiful thing about humans in comparison and contrast to nature, is we can deal with each other not through violence or conformity or complacency, but we can use our words to develop a whole new kind of relationship, where it can be conducive with allowing each other to do our own thing, which is beneficial as far as the freedom aspect of it. But it also creates, if you allow other people to do their things, their happiness, if they're happy in their own skin and their own environment, that is actually the best way to make sure that you're going to be happy in your environment. Because if you have a lot of resentful or angry people around you, they're going to always try to impose or use that anger as a means of retaliation. So the happier everyone can be, men, women, or children, all of us inclusively and included, is the best we can do to give everyone the ability to be free in their own skin and create a sense of their own meaning in their life, as long as they're not imposing on anyone else. That's conducive for not just the male, but the female species and everything else that entails going forward.
Yeah, and I think what always frustrates me is when you see how much America has been able to accomplish with the little freedom that they have been given, how much wealth they've been able to create. Amazing. If you open the floodgates and give them total freedom and actually adhere to good principles and values and let the free market reign, I just am mind blown of what the possibilities could be like, right? The innovation they must stifle. It's crazy. And maybe that's why they do it. Maybe they want to hoard the technologies. You know, a lot of people in the conspiracy theory realm think that maybe is what the problem is. Why these rich bastards cling to power so much is because they know they're on the brink of these life extension technologies and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, just look at how far we've come so far in the last 100 years. So I can only imagine what they have now. And, you know, that's always the thing. I know that we don't have any hard evidence, but I always like to just ponder and think to myself is, what do they have for advanced technologies in some of these military bases and stuff like that? Because they don't really show much to the public. And you always find out with all these patents and stuff by the government, you know, they'll give you some cool technology, and then you'll find out the army's had it for maybe 30 or 20 years prior to that, you know. And the army played a key role into inventing the internet and communication technologies so they can communicate with soldiers around the world. And you know, a lot of these inventions and stuff in the technology realm is being pushed by these military powers through these black budgets to, you know, determine better ways of controlling the population, better ways of warfare, just ways to give them an added edge over their enemies. So I can just imagine what they must have nowadays. It'd probably blow your mind. And that's where you start to see some of these advanced movies where the technologies look really high advanced, and like you know, you could just probably imagine they're probably desensitizing the population of stuff they probably already have now.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm seeing 3-Star Muir. He's been here for a little while. Not even sure if it's a bot or a real being, because the comments is actually the most dominant comments in this whole thing. But anyways, liberal is anarchy. How the hell do you get liberal as anarchy? Are you talking liberal in the class? I don't even know where you can get that, because if you're talking about modern liberals, my God, they're definitely not anarchists. Look at Trudeau and his lackeys. These people love government. Holy shit! Everything I think they eat, drink, shit, fart, sleep, and piss. Central planning. If you're talking about liberals today, so who are the people that you're referencing? I mean, like I say, you have to. This is the unfortunate part today, is we have to use real clarity of language when you're talking about the kind of people that you're referencing, because, well, especially if you're talking about someone like me or talking to someone like me, is I always stick to the defined meanings of words. That's actually where I see a lot of the conversations that I've had with a lot of people, is we end up talking past each other because the people that seem to be on the other side of the equation or the conversation don't even actually genuinely understand what the words that we use on a daily or regular basis mean. And like I say, the only way we're going to have decent dialogue or conversation is that if we actually reflect on the fact that we have to understand what the words actually mean by the very definition, not that you should be able to reinvent that. That's the problem with the political class, right? The political class for the last 50, 60 years have taught like generations of people to think that, no, you don't have to even worry about the dictionary defined meaning of words. Politicians have told you, no, it's got a whole new meaning that suits their political rhetoric. Well, if you fall for that nonsense, well, then how are we going to have a conversation when you don't even understand that, you know, 2 + 2 is 4? If you're coming from the position that your political masters told you that 2 + 2 is 5, how are we going to ever have a dialogue? How are we going to have a conversation, especially when you're talking about math, if you always think that 2 + 2 is 5 because your political masters told you that 2 + 2 is 5? Like I said, we're never going to be talking to each other. We're always and forever going to be talking past each other, and we're never going to get to the point where we're going to be able to find some common ground or agreement where we can come together if you don't even understand the words and terms of what
he's saying in the classical sense. I think they're saying in the classical sense, and they're saying that the liberal term was stolen in the 1900s by Marxists and stuff like that. So they're trying to say,
okay, but this is the thing, and I've seen this so many fucking times. Actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is something I want to make really, really fucking a real important point right now. Why the fuck are you stupid enough to allow anyone to take over the words? Don't let them do it. I tell this to people all the fucking time when they say, oh, well, they said, don't let them fucking steal your language. If you're foolish or naive enough to let someone else reinvent the language that suits their political purpose, and then you kind of argue with them based on their reinterpretation of the words, well, they're already at the fucking win. They're going to win that fucking battle every time, because you're playing in their fucking game. You've allowed them to completely reinvent the language to suit their purpose, and then you're going to function from. No, I know what liberalism means. I have a dictionary. And actually, I have a real dictionary. Actually, you can't see it because it got stuff in the way. But hey, don't even need one. We have the internet. I can have access to the Merriam-Webster's, the Oxford, or the new online or whatever dictionaries. You can learn about the terms and words. It doesn't take much. Literally, whatever it takes to type the word out and then hit definition or meaning. Maybe some people don't realize this. Well, okay, let me help those of you, I guess, that don't know how to navigate the internet yet. Go to Google. Right? Whatever word that you want to look up, capitalism, socialism, fascism, Nazism, free markets, anything that you want to learn, all you got to do is just, like I say, open up a new page, on your web browser, pick whatever browser you want to use, and then you type in that word, and then just after it, just hit meaning or definition. Matter of fact, if well in Google, you just start finishing the word, you'll see it'll come up meaning or definition anyway. So you don't even have to add that. It's already there for you. They've already done the work for you. And then once you understand what that meaning actually means, then the minute you hear someone try to espouse some rhetoric that doesn't align with that meaning, then you know that they're coming from a political standpoint where they're just using rhetoric. They're not actually telling you anything that's objectively true. They're just trying to convince you to believe their rhetoric. And the only people that fall for that, like I say, in the age of information, ignorance is a complete choice. If you're falling for someone that says liberalism means progressivism or collectivism, then you have not even taken 5 fucking seconds of your day to figure out what the word even means. And if you haven't taken that time of your day, do you really think I give a fuck about what your opinion is? And I'm not saying this to this gentleman. Let me just say that. I'm not saying it to you, but I'm saying to anyone that's watching this video, if you haven't taken the time, that few seconds out of your life to learn the actual meaning of the words that these people are throwing around, and then you just go by, well, because they said this is what it means, then, well, I better. If you've done that, you fucking failed yourself and you failed the rest of humanity and the rest of society. And if that's the case, then my suggestion to you is, if you're that much of a failure, shut the fuck up and just go about your daily duties and don't engage in politics or philosophy or anything that has anything to do with how we deal with each other, because it tells me you're functioning from a realm of ignorance, and I don't want ignorant people having any influence on people that are trying to learn about what it is to be a free human being.
All right, we got a question posed to us. So by Coach T Mac, he says the border issue is in a libertarian model. How do we protect our citizens, the illegal crossers at the border, and the Russians surveying our Arctic unprotected? So I guess he's wondering, in a libertarian model, how would borders function and how would we protect the land?
Well, that's pretty easy, actually, to tell you the truth, because as a libertarian, which is all about the non-aggression principle, but I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment, U.S., right? Not Canada, even though I am Canadian. The reason why I consider myself a libertarian is because, I definitely respect and promote the Second Amendment. Now, in Canada, that's a little bit secondary in nature because we have a lot of history with England, which disarmed the population. Because I believe if you want to hold anyone to account is to have the ability to do so. So government represents a big, gigantic gun in the room. Well, if you want to push back or be an opponent of them, then you have to at least have that equalizing ability to defend yourself against those who try to inflict their own pretenses of what they deem as being free on you. Now, as far as citizens crossing the border and Russian surveying, listen, I'll defend, like I say, I'm just a regular Canadian. I don't need to join the military, right? Just like if someone decided they want to invade on my neighbor's property. I'm not a military guy. I'm not a cop. But if I see someone fucking with my neighbor, because I recognize that I live in that geographical vicinity, and if they're going to fuck with my neighbor, there's a fairly good chance they might fuck with me too. Well, I'm going to stand in defense of my neighbor because it's in my best interest to do so. That's what militias, that's why the U.S. government, that's why the founding fathers of the U.S. didn't set up a standing army. They set up militias so that people, because let's think about it. An army is what? Especially when you're talking about conscription. A conscripted army is the government tells you have to defend what we deem you that you have to defend. Whereas you as an individual, you will defend your property or your backyard or your neighbor's backyard. You don't need a central planner or a government to tell you to do that. You'll do that because it's in your best interest or your family's best interest or your community's best interest. So once again, it always comes down to proper incentives. And in the militia, because a militia isn't top-down authoritarianism, look at places like Egypt, Libya. All you have to, or Iraq. When you live under a top-down authoritarian regime or a military-type state, all you got to do is take out a couple generals at the top. And then the rest of them are like, I don't know what to fucking do because I relied on my fucking leader to tell me how I'm supposed to think or act. In a militia-type system where everyone has the competence and ability to defend themselves and their neighbors or their community, there is no top-down structure. Matter of fact, most central planning governments would never want to overtake, which is why the U.S. was never, from 1770s till what, World War I or II, no one ever tried to take over the U.S., right? And it was a place that, Why didn't any of these fucking allies in Europe didn't decide, what, hey, look, they're taking over North America. Why don't we take over instead? How come the U.S. wasn't totally turned upside down and isn't a modern Islamic state or a modern Chinese communist state? Why? Because the fucking people knew damn well to defend themselves, and because they did it under a militia type system where everybody has the ability to have their autonomy and their individuality and stand for their own defense of what they believe in. There wasn't a top-down structure or one central figure that you could get rid of and it would destroy everyone else that were the subordinates. Like I say, there's an easy way to protect and defend not just you and your community or your family or your borders as far as the country, and you have to function under proper incentive and do what's right. You don't need a top-down authoritarianism government. You just need people with the necessary tools, which is the ability to arm themselves. And I mean, because we live in the modern world of nuclear technologies, every country that cares about their sovereignty, if you want to create a status type of thing, I'm not much of a statist, but because I recognize that we live in a state, if we want to protect the country of Canada and equalize things, well, you become a nuclear power. It's a deterrent that nobody's going to fuck with you when your gun is just as big as the other guy. Just like if you walked into a pub or a bar down in Texas, when everybody in the bar is equally armed or at least has the capacity to be armed, you can walk into one of those bars someday and you'll see, oh man, they treat each other with a lot of respect, as you rightfully would when you know the person that's on the other side of that equation has the ability to take you out if you don't treat them with respect. Once again, it always comes down to proper incentive, folks. The people that aren't oppressed are the people that have the ability to defend themselves. Like I say, whether it's personally, whether it's talking about community, or when you're talking about a government structure. And the best kind of structures when you're talking about as far as defending yourself is not having a one size fits all, but having a whole lot of individuals and autonomous people that are willing to stand in defense, because you can take down one structure in an individual state, but you're not going to take it all down. It's not going to be like the domino effect where, like Iraq, where you topple Saddam, and because everyone else was considered just as mindless subordinates, all you had to do was topple Saddam and it destroyed the entire infrastructure of that country. In the U.S., they set it up as you could topple the fucking president or the Congress or the Senate, but you're still never going to overwhelm the American people because they already have the psychology, the philosophy, and the ability to defend themselves.
Yeah, so I'll give my take on the question too. And if anyone else wants to put their questions in the chat, feel free to do so, because we'll probably wrap up soon. We're at the 2:15, so we're at about our time that we finish. So any questions, put them in there now. So I guess my take on the border issue is to Coach T-Mac. Don't get confused. Modern libertarians lobbying for border control currently with Trump and then the administration here in Canada as well, with our principled stance. So we understand if we live in a modern state with a welfare society, we obviously want to have border control because more people are going to flood in and take care of those, take advantage of those welfare programs. But in your question, I think you said border issue in a libertarian model, like my father said. So to protect the land, the individuals, like my father said, I think he explained it good enough. The militia, the individual person will want to defend that land because there's a vested interest in keeping the culture and the land and the property and your family. But also on another aspect of that, if there's no welfare state, if there's no financial cushion net, then you're not going to get these mass immigration from these third world countries. Because if you're in a third world country,
why would
it costs money to come to our country, right? Especially if you're over in the Middle East, then you got to cross the ocean, right? So if you're from Mexico and those type of places, I guess you could technically walk up to America. So if you're in a third world country, you first got to come up with the money, the strength, the will to even take that trek on to be able to come into our country. And then once you get here, there ain't nothing for you unless you got to find a job or make it in this Western society, and you come from some war-torn country with not much education, and you're just going to all of a sudden function in downtown New York in a McDonald's. It ain't going to work, man. It's just not going to work that well. So people aren't going to just take that plunge if there's no welfare programs to cushion that trek and cushion that fall. So go ahead, try to immigrate here, because if you're going to immigrate here, you're going to make some contributions to the society, and you're going to create wealth and value. And we're not anti-immigrant in a libertarian sense. If you want to come here and you're not violating anyone's rights, you're not initiating violence, all you're doing is creating a life for yourself, creating wealth, and obviously contributing, because we're not giving you any kind of welfare bailouts. That's awesome in my books. You know, there's a lot of people in the Black culture, Hispanic culture, Asian culture that are hardcore libertarians as well. So I wouldn't want to boycott those people on the basis of race and stuff, you know. If they can contribute, then that's fine. So, and then I guess, what was the second aspect of the question here? Let me get to it. Russians surveying our Atlantic unprotected. Well, if we have interest, if the individual, if businesses and corporations in Canada function on the free market and they create their own business and company, and they find that they can create wealth by going up there and doing stuff in Antarctica, then they can go up there and do that, and there'll be invested interest to protect their property as well. But if us Canadians are just sitting up and doing nothing, and it's just a sheet of ice and rock up there, and Russia wants to go over there and do something with it or create any wealth of it, then whatever, we have no value, or we have no right to that land if we're not creating anything of wealth out of that land. And if you're worried of, oh, well, now Russia has a better military point, now they're right above us, if they want to try to attack, the same rules apply, that you're going to try to attack a militia state, like my father already said, with a gun behind every blade, with a society that's willing to defend and protect their culture. I mean, just look at the movie 300. That's a good movie and a good parable, right? You had supposedly tens of thousands, potentially 100,000 Persians rolling up on the small Greek army. You know, they're vastly outnumbered, but what made every Greek, whether it was a potter or an army man or a cook or a chef, take up their Greek military shields and say, we're not going to let you just bulldoze our culture, because they know, they looked at the Persian culture and they said, that's not adhere to our values. We don't like to live like that. We like to live under our culture. So there's going to be that resistance. There's going to be that community rising up. And if they don't, well, shame on you guys. You didn't rise up. You didn't adhere to your principles. You got mowed over by a more aggressive culture, and you will die, and you will be lost to the pages of history, just like so many cultures that weren't so aggressive or maybe passive in the moment of resistance. Now we don't hear of them. So, you know, that's how life goes on. The strong, and I'm not even opposed to the strong survive and the strong progress, because if the strong progress and the strong survive and the species gets better and better and better, then the poor in that society, or the lesser fortunate that do survive the peril times, will also benefit and reap from the leadership of the really wealthy and ambitious, you know. So the poor in a rich society do better than the poor in a poor society, right? So I don't know, the best move forward, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, the collectivist types are always about the only way they can compete, right? So if you're inept socially or economically, the only way you can compete is to bring everyone down to your level. So if you're the last person in that, you know, if you're having one of those, you know, let's say a few 100-meter dashes and there's 10 people lined up, well, if you're the slowest motherfucker on that goddamn in that race, well, the only way you'll ever equalize that is to get everyone else to go slower or as slow as you are, right? At least that's the only way you could ever equalize that. Whereas the people that are ambitious, adventurous, or want to educate or enlighten people or do things in a different manner, you don't have to necessarily agree with them, as long as they're not using force. At least it gives you the option, so that they've got a better training method, right? So just like with Olympics, sure, you could sit on your ass if you want to be a competitor in that 500-meter dash or 400-meter dash. Well, you could sit on your ass and see how that works out for you. Maybe your natural genetics will give you some decent position, but if you put in the hard work and effort, and you do what's right, and you make sure you start on time, you finish. If you do all the right things, most time you will always prove to be the benefactor as a consequence of all that hard work and effort you put into it. And that's, to me, that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is just allowing proper incentives to work for humans. Because that's the thing. I hear people say all the time that libertarians are like utopians. Like they try to correlate or contrast us with these leftists or these collectivists. No, libertarians are nothing. I have no pretense that we're all going to be respectful of individual liberty and freedom. But the reason why I'm a libertarian is because all I have to do is rely on me to understand that concept. I don't have to rely on everyone else to do that. I have to rely on me. That's the beautiful thing about being an individual. I just have to rely on me to understand that concept and know that when somebody's using preemptive force or violence against me, I have that confidence and the ability to hold myself or to challenge them or to push back against whatever they try to force or impose upon me. And that, at the end of the day, is what matters most. Like I say, collectivism always tries to bring us down to the lowest common denominator, whereas capitalism or the fundamentals of the philosophy of freedom, those the proponents that espouse it, is always try to educate, enlighten, and elevate us to some degree. We're not stagnant, and neither are we white. Try to, like, actually conservatives would be just as regressive as today a lot of these progressives. That's the thing. That's the oxymoron of the term progressive. Actually, they regress. They're still playing identity politics, where that we should all be treated equally. So if you're a white male, you know, you somehow have some inherent advantage against LGBTQ or a racial minority. That's not true, because that's not even conducive with the reality that's on the ground. The reality on the ground says that every human being has their own lot, their own place in life. And what I want to do is see everyone have the ability, at least the opportunity, and they'll never reach that, because all of us, we have opportunities. Doesn't mean we're always going to reach the goal that we set out for us. But at least if we have the potential, at least if every one of us have had the shackles removed and released to the point where we can at least strive for it, we're still going to have all kinds of variances and differences in outcome. There's still going to be people that'll be losers, and there's still going to be people that are going to be winners. But at the end of the day, the ones that are losers, actually, if we do it in the proper manner, the way they'll go from losers to winners is because they recognize that the people that became winners, as long as the winners did it under a proper incentive structure and they did it under voluntary means, then the person that was a loser, they'll recognize that, oh, I can do that too. I just got to follow suit and do the same thing, or at least try to replicate as best as I can the same kind of functions or the same kind of ethics that these people did that created them to be the winners. And maybe someday I won't even reach or attain that level. But at the very least, I'll see that every endeavor I undertake, if I do at least follow through with this model of voluntarism, of freedom of exchange, and of values and principles, at least I'll see that it's much more conducive for me, not just today, but me tomorrow, me next week, next month, next year, and for the course of my life. Nobody's going to have any, there's not going to be any of these collectivism systems, as much as these proponents try to put forward, present, where we're going to equalize things. There's never, ever going to be an equality of outcome, even with top-down authoritarianism. They tried that, like I said, 20th century, the landscape of Europe is dotted with mass graves of people that tried to create this pretense of equality of outcome. That's not going to happen. But at the very least, I will agree with one thing with the collectivists ever tried to attempt, is at least give people the opportunity. I don't want to fucking make it so that I'm picking winners or losers in the economy, but I will agree with one thing that the collectivists have always promoted, is to give people some form of equality of opportunity. They want equality of outcome. I disagree with them there, but I do definitely agree that everyone should at least be given the chance, afforded the ability to try to thrive and survive or become successful based on their merit and what they bring to the table. And if they do it as a successful model, even if I maybe don't necessarily agree with how they did it, as long as they did it with voluntary means and people chose to voluntarily interact or engage with them, hey, if they become beneficial as a consequence of that, good for them, and I should never do anything to detract or deny them their ability to do so.
So let me pose a scenario for people. So a lot of people will get mad at Western nations for the fact that they come in and invaded and took over the lands from the native people and stuff like that. So let me pose how a libertarian society would take over land and expand their nation. So you have some kind of primitive culture out in the jungle, and they haven't really experienced many other cultures, and you roll up with your technology and you say, hey, listen, now we can help you guys out here. We can give you guys medicine. We can clean up all the sickness here. That problem you're having over there giving running water, we can show you technologies how to make that easier. We can throw you guys some clothing here. We can make your life. And they're probably like, geez, this is wonderful, right? They're either going to have two options. They're going to want to stay the way they are, struggling with their existence, their primitive way of lifestyle, and they might say, no, we like the way our lives, and they might tell us, okay, and we have to leave them alone, not violate the non-aggression principle. They want to stick to their struggle way of life. That's their decision. Or they'll take the latter and they'll be like, we'll gladly have you heal our children and have running water and give us these technologies to make our lifestyle better. And, that's how we get in and say, oh, well, because we're giving these technologies to you, can we have some of that land? Or, we give to you, you give to us in voluntary free trade. And that's the conversation that the history books don't tell you much about in the American Revolution. Is a lot of the white colonials come over here and did that with the natives. They said, hey, we'll take your furs, you take this beer, and then we'll show you how to fire weapons, and we'll teach you how to make aqueducts and running water. And it wasn't just people rolling up on ships like they try to make it out to be in the movies, and just killing and mowing down Native Americans and stealing their land, and them laughing at them and giving them smallpox blankets in a time where they didn't even know about germ diseases and the medical advancements to be able to understand that, oh, we can pass different germs around. They didn't even know that stuff back then. So you can't even make the claim that, oh, they strategically gave them smallpox blankets, because they didn't even understand that was something that they could even do. They didn't understand germ warfare. So no, it wasn't like that. The American invasion predominantly probably went down like making small negotiation trades, making the Indians' way of lifestyle better, and therefore giving them land, because the Indians didn't mind having them around, because they gave them these technologies and things that they didn't have in their more primitive culture. So, that's how a libertarian voluntary society moves in with another culture and helps them out and benefits off that without firing a single round. And that's how it's properly done. Not the way it's been done throughout history, where might makes right, which is the communist and socialist, power. The army rolls up, and we're going to tell you how to do your culture. We're going to tell you what's right and wrong, and we're going to tax. We're going to determine how much to tax from you in order to pay for these programs to make your life a better way of life. Instead, I like the latter, the capitalist model. Let's trade win-win scenarios.
Yeah. Actually, I know we're going to be tying this up quicker, so I just want to do this right now, folks. And I actually should have done it at the beginning of this video, because, but like I say, I get really involved in these kinds of conversations because I realize how important they are. But you know what? I'm just going to hold up my glass right now. And my grandpa died the other day, my real dad's dad. I love the man with all my heart. He did a great job raising my father. And I think he was he had stomach cancer, and rather than, actually, I'm just going to give a quick story here. So he's one of those guys, like I say, I draw my inspiration from people that are real close and dear to my heart. And my grandmother on my mom's side and my grandfather on my dad's side are two people that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And I'll tell you, as in regards to my grandfather on my dad's side, he was a blue collar guy his whole life, worked his whole life being independent, staunchly independent, and raised his 6 boys and girls. And like I say, a dedicated man. And even after he retired and he could have rested and relied on his laurels, he still continued to be a really hardworking man that stood for the most amazing things that, like I say, that matter most to me, like individual freedom, personal autonomy, sovereignty, standing for what's right. And even at the end of his life, he was, I think 92 or so years old, 91, 92 years old. And even at the end of his life, he was told that he had stomach cancer. And rather than going to the hospital, which they could have given him an extra bit of time, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, it was in late stages. So it was rough. But rather than him, put economic hardships on the people, or the social or the emotional pain on his family of having to go through that whole long procedure and that process. Because you know what happened. If you're one of those people that have ever had anyone in your family go through and experience someone that's gone through like cancer and, programs where they're trying to fix, that's rough, not just for the person that's going through it, but also for the family, because you got to deal with this on a continuing, ongoing basis. Anyway, my grandfather said, no, I've been on my own, taking care of myself my whole life, and I'm not about to change that tomorrow. And he said, you know what? I get it. Thanks for giving me, thanks for that heads up. You say if I don't come in for this cancer treatment, that I'm probably not going to be for this earth for much longer. But he looked at it more or less probably the same way I would look at it. I've had a good life. I've lived 90 plus years in my life. I've done a lot of productive things. I've raised some great kids. I've got some great grandkids and some great grandkids. And I'm okay with that. I don't want to cause more harm to economically or socially to not just my family, but society at large. And you know what? He spent his last days in his home, still being that individual sovereign being that he always was. And he took his last breath, and he's now gone. But you know what? He's joined my dad today, and I'm happy for that. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional here, but it's I'm happy that I have good examples in my life that not just stand for, but live day to day on the stuff that I respect as a free human being. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm fucking no. That's not even what I'm all about. And sorry for this, guys, but I just want to take a drink for my grandpa.
Yeah, happy St. Patty's Day, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and definitely going to keep doing this stuff. And hopefully, you guys enjoyed the questioning and the questions and answer period. And we'll try to keep doing that and facilitate it more in the ones upcoming. And stay tuned for the next one. We'll do it on next Sunday, and we're enjoying the company. You guys keep us in the chat. Good questions. Keep them coming.
Right on, Matt.